Okay, so I don't usually talk about this. Not really. It's something that's been stuck in my head for years, just kinda there. Like a bad dream you can't quite shake, even though you know you're awake. But I saw a post somewhere that reminded me of it, and honestly, just typing this out feels weirdly like I should finally just put it out there. Maybe someone else has seen something like it? I don't know. This was back in 2008. July, I think. Yeah, middle of July. I was living upstate New York at the time in Herkimer County. Small town kind of place. I had a friend who lived out past Little Falls, way out, near Middleville actually. And we'd been hanging out, just normal stuff, watching a movie, playing some video games, you know, guy stuff. I left his place late, really late. Probably close to midnight, maybe even a little after. It was a summer night, but out there, away from town, it gets dark. Like dark, dark. No streetlights, no nothing, just black sky and the woods pressing in on both sides of the road. I was driving back home, taking Black Creek Road. Anyone from around there knows Black Creek Road. It's out there. It's not a road you drive down unless you have to. It's twisty, hilly in places, and mostly surrounded by woods. Barely any houses. It's desolate, that's the word. I remember the windows were down because it was still kind of warm out, even that late. Radio was playing low, some classic rock station, just cruising along, thinking about whatever, nothing special. Then my headlights hit something in the road ahead. At first I honestly thought it was a deer. Deer are everywhere out there, but even in that split second of just seeing it in the headlights, something felt off. It was bigger than a deer, way bigger. And it wasn't moving like a deer. As I got closer, I could see it clearer. It wasn't crossing the road running like a deer would. It was walking, upright, on two legs. That's when my stomach started to do a weird flip. My brain was screaming, "That's not right!" It came out of the woods on the right side of the road, heading towards the left, my side. It was massive, just huge. Like I'm trying to find words to describe it, and massive feels too small. It was like something out of a nightmare. It was covered in hair, dark hair, long, shaggy, dark hair, from head to wherever its feet were touching the ground. You couldn't see skin or clothes or anything else, just hair, dark, thick hair, like a bear but not. Bears don't walk like that. Bears definitely don't stand 7 feet tall. As I got closer, I started slowing down, way down. My heart was starting to pound in my chest. I couldn't take my eyes off it. It just kept lumbering is the best word, lumbering across the road, slow, heavy steps, like it weighed a ton. And it was tall. Jesus, it was tall. Taller than any person I've ever seen. I'm not bad at judging height, and I'm telling you, this thing was easily 7 feet tall, maybe even more. And broad shoulders like a linebacker on steroids, but all covered in hair. It got to the edge of the road, my side, just as my car was almost right there. And it stopped, just stopped, right at the edge of the asphalt, maybe 2-3 feet from the road itself, from where I was driving. It was so close. So unbelievably close. I'm crawling now, my car is barely moving. My headlights are blasting right on it. I could see every detail, every terrifying, impossible detail. The hair, it was matted in places like it lived outside, in the woods. But it wasn't just hair, it was thick like fur almost, but longer, coarser. And on its arms, this is what really sticks with me. On its arms the hair was even longer, like disproportionately long, like ape-like arms almost. I remember thinking, no human has arms like that. No animal I know has arms like that. The hair on its arms hung down almost to its knees. I don't even know if it had knees like we do. It was just joints and hair and muscle and bulk. As I crept past, I was holding my breath. I don't even know if I was breathing. I was just staring, frozen, terrified. It was just standing there, solid as a rock, blocking out the stars behind it. It was just there. And then, slowly, deliberately, it started to turn its head. and its upper body. Slow, like it had all the time in the world, like I was nothing, just another bug passing by. It turned its head towards my car, towards me, and it looked down, just lowered its head and looked down, right at my window, right at me. I'll never forget its eyes. Never. They weren't like a deer's eyes, all soft and gentle. They weren't like a bear's eyes, beady and black. They were dark, deep set, and they seemed to, I don't know, understand. Like there was something behind them, something intelligent. They were almost human, but not human. They were animal, definitely animal, but with something else mixed in. Something ancient, something knowing. It's hard to describe. They locked on mine for maybe a second, maybe two. It felt like forever. Just this massive thing looking down at me, its eyes boring into mine, and there was no expression, no anger, no threat, no curiosity even. Just looking, observing, like it was taking me in, sizing me up, deciding if I was relevant or just nothing. In that moment, every hair on my body stood on end. My heart went into overdrive. I swear I could hear it pounding in my ears. My hands were slick with sweat on the steering wheel. I just wanted to be gone. I wanted to disappear. Then, just as suddenly as it turned to look at me, it looked away. Not away in the sense of turning its head all the way back, just shifted its gaze, down towards the ground maybe, or just off to the side. It broke eye contact, and that was my chance. I didn't think, I just reacted. I slammed my foot down on the gas pedal. The car lurched forward, tires spinning for a second on the asphalt, and I was gone. I didn't look back. I didn't want to look back. I just kept my foot down, going way too fast for that road, praying I wouldn't hit a deer or run off the side or something. I just needed to get away from that thing. I drove like a maniac all the way home. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold onto the steering wheel. My heart was still pounding, hammering in my chest. I was drenched in sweat even though it wasn't hot anymore. I felt sick, like I was going to throw up. I pulled into my driveway and just sat there for a minute, engine running, trying to catch my breath, trying to make sense of what I had just seen, but it made no sense. None at all. I shut off the car, got out, and practically ran inside. I slammed the door behind me, locked it, and just stood there in the hallway, panting. My parents were already in bed, I knew, but I needed to tell someone. I went into the living room and turned on the lights. Everything seemed normal. Everything in my house was just normal, and that made it even weirder. Just minutes ago I had seen that. And now I was back in my normal, safe house, and it was like it hadn't even happened, except I knew it had. I felt it had. Deep down in my bones, I knew what I had seen was real. I waited until morning to say anything. I was scared of what people would think, scared they'd laugh, or think I was crazy, or just brush it off as me seeing things. But I couldn't keep it in. I had to tell someone, so the next morning I told my dad. Just sat him down at the kitchen table and told him everything. Exactly what I saw, exactly how I felt. I didn't exaggerate anything. I just laid it all out. He listened. He didn't interrupt, didn't laugh, didn't say anything until I was finished. And when I was done, he just sat there for a minute looking at me, and then he said, "You're serious, aren't you?" And I told him, "Dad, I've never been more serious about anything in my life." He knew I wasn't someone who made things up. He knew I wasn't a liar. He knew I was genuinely terrified, and I think he believed me. Maybe not at first, but he saw how shaken I was. He didn't say it was a bear or a deer or anything like that. He didn't try to explain it away. He just nodded, and he told me to tell Mom. So I did. She was more skeptical at first, I guess. But she saw how upset I was too. We talked about it for a while. My dad asked me questions, little details, trying to understand. And the more I talked about it, the more real it felt, even though it was still unbelievable. We didn't tell anyone else. Not really. Just kept it in the family. I was too embarrassed to tell my friends. I knew they'd make fun of me. I could just hear it now. Oh, you saw Bigfoot? Yeah, no thanks. My dad, though, he actually did some digging. He talked to some older guys around town, guys who'd lived there their whole lives, guys who knew the woods, and he heard some stories, whispers really, stories about something out in the woods, something big, something hairy, something that walked upright. Old stories, mostly. Things people didn't talk about much. Local legends, some called them, fairy tales, others said, but stories. He never said he believed in Bigfoot or anything like that. But he definitely took what I saw seriously. He told me he'd heard enough weird things over the years to know that there are things out there we just don't understand, things that aren't in books, things science can't explain. And that was it. That's all I know. I drove down Black Creek Road that night, and I saw something that I can't explain. Something huge, hairy, upright, with eyes that looked right through me. Something that scared me more than anything has ever scared me before or since. I still think about it sometimes, especially when I'm driving late at night on a dark road in the woods. I still catch myself glancing at the side of the road, just checking, just in case. Even now, years later, thinking about it, it still sends a shiver down my spine. I don't know what it was. I really don't. And I guess I never will. But I saw it. I know what I saw, and I know I'll never forget it. That's my story. Take it for what it's worth. Story 2. It was March 11th, 1975. I remember the date perfectly, even without trying. Some days just etch themselves into you, burn right into your memory so you can never scrub them clean. That was one of those days. I was 11. My cousin Bethany was 2. Practically twins in age, and always together. We were at my Aunt Carol's house on the Res, Onondaga, upstate New York. It was late winter, that kind of in-between time where the snow is mostly gone, but the air still bites and everything looks grey and damp. Around 11 in the morning, we decided to head back to my house. It wasn't far, maybe a mile as the crow flies. We could have taken the road, Route 11A, but we always preferred cutting through the woods. Seemed quicker, and honestly, even back then, the woods felt safer than the road. Less cars, less everything. You know how it is when you're a kid in the country. The woods are your playground, your shortcut, everything in between. So, we headed out the back of Aunt Carol's yard, straight into the trees. It was that kind of quiet you only get in the woods. No wind, no cars, just the soft crunch of our boots on the leaves and pine needles. But even though it was quiet, it wasn't peaceful quiet. It was heavy, like something was listening. I know, sounds stupid now, especially trying to write it down. But that's how it felt then. Both of us, Bethany and me, we started getting this prickly feeling on the back of our necks, like when you know someone's staring at you, even if you can't see them. We walked faster, just wanting to get out of the thickest part of the woods and closer to the open fields near the gravel pits. The gravel pits were this abandoned area. They used to dig up gravel there years ago, I guess. It was on res land, but no one really went there anymore. It was just there. A big, empty space like a scar in the land. As we got closer, the trees started to thin out and we could see the open sky again, a sickly pale blue through the branches. And then we were there, at the edge of the gravel pits. It wasn't really a pit like you'd imagine, not a deep hole in the ground, more like a big scooped-out area with sloped sides and some parts still kind of deep. There was this embankment, maybe 10 feet high, leading down into the main area. Bethany, being Bethany, always the daredevil, just slid right down the embankment, kicking up loose dirt and pebbles as she went. I was a little more careful, always was, but I followed her down. At the bottom, it was desolate. Grey dirt, patches of dead grass, and a big frozen mud puddle right in the middle. That's what caught Bethany's eye. She started messing around by the edge of the puddle, kicking at the ice that was still hanging on. I remember feeling uneasy, even more than in the woods. It was like the air itself felt thin and stretched. I don't know how else to explain it. Maybe it was just the silence, the emptiness of the place. But it was more than that. It felt wrong. I remembered I'd lost my glove somewhere back in the woods, probably dropped it when we were walking fast because of that weird feeling. Stupid glove, but it was new, and Mum would be mad if I lost it already. So I told Bethany, "Hey, I think I dropped my glove back there. I'm going back up to look for it." She barely looked up from her frozen puddle. "Okay," she mumbled, still poking at the ice. I started to climb back up the embankment, scrambling on my hands and knees. It was loose dirt, hard to get a good grip. I was maybe halfway up, still looking back towards the woods, trying to retrace our steps in my mind, when I heard Bethany yell, not just yell, but scream. It was a sound that just ripped right through the quiet. My heart jumped into my throat. I spun around, forgetting about my glove, forgetting about everything except Bethany. She was standing frozen, just a few feet from the edge of the pit, staring down at the ground right next to her. At first, I didn't see anything, just mud and dead grass. "Bethany, what is it? What's wrong?" I asked, my voice shaky. She didn't answer me right away. She just kept staring, her eyes wide, like she'd seen a ghost. Then she started backing away slowly, still staring. "Cheryl, Cheryl." Her voice was barely a whisper, all the scream gone, replaced by this thin, terrified sound. "What? Bethany, tell me!" I was getting scared now too, just from her face. I started scrambling back down the embankment towards her, and that's when she finally grabbed me. She lunged forward, grabbed my arm and yanked me to her, pulling me so close I could feel her shaking. She squeezed my arm so tight it hurt. Then she whispered right in my ear, her breath hot and fast. It was trying to grab me, a black arm, from the edge. A black arm? What was she talking about? I looked down at the edge of the pit again where she'd been standing. Still nothing, just mud and grass. Maybe she'd seen a stick, or a shadow. Kids see things, you know, especially when you're already jumpy. But the way she was holding on to me, the pure terror in her eyes, it wasn't like just seeing a shadow. This was real fear. Raw, bone-deep fear. "What arm, Bethany?" "I don't see anything," I said, trying to sound calm, even though my own heart was pounding. She shook her head, still whispering, like whatever it was could still hear us. "No, it's gone, but it was there, reaching out. Big, black." She trailed off, just shaking her head again. My mind started racing. Hunter? Someone hiding in the trees? Someone worse? We were on the res, but you still heard stories. Bad stories. Things that happened in the woods. Things you didn't want to think about. Fear sparked in me then. Real, sharp fear. And it wasn't just for Bethany. It was for both of us. "We need to go," I said, pulling her hand. "Come on, let's go to the road." She didn't argue. She just nodded, her eyes still wide, and we started running. We ran as fast as we could back towards the woods, towards the edge of the trees that separated the gravel pits from Route 11A. We didn't look back. We just ran, our boots pounding on the dirt, our breath coming in ragged gasps. We burst out of the tree line, onto the grassy verge beside the road. We didn't stop, we just kept running, our eyes fixed on the road, on the houses in the distance. We just wanted to get home, to safety, to people. And that's when it happened. That's when we saw it. We were maybe 20, 30 feet from the edge of the trees, still running, when I glanced back just for a second. Just a quick look over my shoulder to make sure. I don't even know what I wanted to make sure of. Maybe that whatever Bethany had seen wasn't following us, and that's when I saw it, standing at the edge of the sumac bushes that grew right along the gravel pits, where the trees ended and the open space began. Just standing there. It was colossal. That's the only word for it. Colossal. The sumac bushes were tall, 6, maybe 8 feet high in places, and this thing, Its head and shoulders towered over them. I'm not talking just a little bit taller. I'm talking head and shoulders above 8-foot bushes. It was dark, black or dark brown, silhouetted against the pale sky. I couldn't make out details, not really, but I could see the shape. Humanoid, but not human, too big, way too big, and bulky, massive. I stopped dead, right in my tracks. Bethany bumped into me, stumbled, and almost fell. "What? What is it?" she gasped, turning around, and then she saw it too, and we both just stood there, frozen, staring. It didn't move. It just stood there, at the edge of the bushes, watching us. I couldn't see its face, not clearly, but I could feel its presence. Heavy, powerful, and ancient. That's the word that comes to mind now. Ancient. My brain couldn't process it. It was like my mind just short-circuited. How could something that big be there? We'd just been there, in the gravel pits, just minutes ago, and it was across the pit, on the far side, from where Bethany had seen the arm. But that was at least 150 feet away, across the whole pit. How could it have gotten there so fast? And without us seeing or hearing anything, we would have heard something that big moving, surely. Crashing through the bushes, something. But there was nothing. Just silence, except for our own ragged breathing. And the size. That's what kept hitting me, the sheer impossible size of it. It shouldn't be real. Things like that weren't real. They were stories, legends, not right there, in front of you, standing in the sumac bushes in the middle of the day. We stood there, staring, for what felt like forever. But it was probably only seconds, frozen in place by disbelief and terror. And then, finally, Bethany found her voice. Just a squeak, really. "Sasquatch," she whispered. And in that moment everything clicked into place. Sasquatch, Bigfoot, the stories we'd heard, the whispers, the legends passed down through generations on the res. About the hairy people, the protectors of the woods, the creatures of the old ways. It sounded crazy, even to me, even then, but what else could it be? What else could be that big, that silent, that impossible? The word Sasquatch broke the spell. We didn't think, we just ran. Again. This time, we didn't stop until we were at my front door, slamming it shut behind us, locking it, fumbling with the chain lock, all shaky hands and racing hearts. We ran into the house, breathless, terrified, babbling, trying to explain what we'd seen. Mom was in the kitchen making lunch. Grandma was sitting at the table reading the newspaper. They looked up, startled by the noise, by our faces, white and streaked with tears. "What happened? What's wrong?" Mom asked, rushing over. We tried to tell them, stumbling over words, pointing back towards the woods, towards the gravel pits. "Bigfoot! We saw Bigfoot in the woods! It was huge! And it tried to grab Bethany." They listened, their faces going from concern to confusion to, well, to that look. The look adults give you when they think you're making something up, when you've let your imagination run wild. Grandma chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. "Bigfoot, huh? Out by the gravel pits? You girls been listening to too many old wives' tales?" Mom tried to be more patient, but I could see she didn't believe us either. "Honey, are you sure? Maybe it was just a deer or a bear?" "No!" Bethany shouted, tears welling up in her eyes again. "It wasn't a deer. It wasn't a bear. It was like a giant man, but hairy and black and so tall. It was standing over the bushes." I nodded, backing her up, my own voice still trembling. "It was real, Mom. I saw it too. It was right there. After Bethany saw the arm, it was there." They exchanged looks, disbelief, amusement, maybe a little worry that we'd gotten too scared by something harmless. They gave us hot chocolate, told us to calm down, that it was probably just shadows or trees, or our imaginations running wild. For days, they kept dismissing it, laughing it off. "Those silly girls and their Bigfoot story," we'd hear them say, when they thought we weren't listening. But we knew what we'd seen. We knew it wasn't a story. It was real. and it had terrified us in a way I can't even explain. We kept telling the story over and over to anyone who would listen. Aunt Carol, Uncle John, our cousins, our friends at school. At first, everyone laughed too, but we didn't back down. We stuck to our story. The black arm, the scream, the giant figure in the sumac bushes, everything, every detail, and slowly, something changed. Maybe it was the way we told it, the raw fear in our voices still, weeks later. Maybe it was just because we were so insistent, so unwavering. But people started to listen, to really listen. My aunt and uncle, they were the first ones to start taking it seriously. Uncle John knew the woods, knew the old stories, the legends of the res better than anyone. He started asking us questions, careful questions, not dismissive ones. Where exactly did we see it? How big was it really? What did it look like? And as we answered, as we drew pictures, as we recounted the details again and again, his face started to change. The skepticism faded, replaced by something else, something like understanding, and maybe even a little bit of fear. He told us about the old legends, about the Omar, the hairy people, the protectors of the land, the ones who walked between worlds. He told us about the sacred places in the woods, places we weren't supposed to go, places that were connected to something ancient and powerful. And he told us about the underground caves, deep, hidden caves that ran for miles under the res, connecting different parts of the land, maybe even connecting to other reservations far away. Legend said the Omar used those caves, traveled through them, guardians of the earth beneath our feet. Over time, even Mom and Grandma started to believe us, or at least they stopped laughing. They saw that we weren't making it up, that we were genuinely scared, genuinely shaken by something real. I still dream about it sometimes. Not often, but it comes back. The feeling in the woods, the heavy quiet, Bethany's scream, that towering figure against the pale sky. And sometimes in my dreams, I hear the calls, not like animal calls, not like anything I've ever heard in the woods in real life. Deep, resonant calls that vibrate in your chest, that seem to come from the earth itself. I'm still afraid of the woods, even now. I don't go in there alone. Not since that day. But the fear is different now. It's not just fear of the unknown, of something bad happening. It's a different kind of respect. A knowledge that there are things out there we don't understand, things older and bigger than us, things that are still connected to the land in ways we've forgotten. And sometimes, when I think about the stories Uncle John told us, about the underground caves, about the Omar being protectors, a strange thought creeps into my mind. A kind of prophecy, almost. What if those stories are true? What if, in some cataclysmic end-of-world scenario, when everything else is falling apart, when fire and destruction rain down, what if the Omar will lead us to safety, into the earth, into the depths, through those hidden caves, to emerge again when the world heals, reborn from the ashes? It sounds crazy, I know, like something out of a movie, but that day in the gravel pits, that wasn't from a movie. That was real. And I saw something that day, something impossible, something that changed the way I see the world, forever. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls through the trees, I wonder if it's still out there, watching, waiting, and if maybe, just maybe, the legends are more real than we ever imagined. I still can't explain what happened that day. I just know what we saw. And I know that something reached out for my cousin in the gravel pits, something massive and black, and I know something even bigger watched us from the sumac bushes, and that's all I know. Story 3. It's still hard for me to talk about it even now, decades later. People say time heals everything, but bullshit. Some things just stick with you, you know? Like a splinter you can never quite get out. This thing in the woods, it's that splinter for me. It was fall of '79. I was 16, living in Oakhaven, which back then was even smaller and more isolated than it is now. We were surrounded by woods. Black Creek Woods was what we called the big stretch of it to the north, and man, it was dark. Real dark. Like you could get lost 5 minutes from your back door if you weren't paying attention dark. Anyway, my parents weren't exactly swimming in cash, and I wanted a car. Seemed like the only way to get one without begging my dad, who worked his ass off already, was to hustle myself. Trapping seemed like a good way to make some extra dough. Fox and raccoon pelts were going for decent money, so I started setting traps, mostly snares and some cage traps, learning from an old-timer down the road named Jebediah. He was a gruff dude, smelled like tobacco and pine needles all the time, but he knew his stuff. He told me the best time to check traps was before dawn, said the animals were most active then, and you got a jump on anyone else who might be running lines. Plus, Jebediah said, the woods were different before the sun came up. He didn't say how different, but he gave me this look, you know, like he knew something he wasn't going to spell out for a kid. I had Bella then, Springer Spaniel, best dog I ever had, hands down. Loyal as could be and smart as a whip. She was always with me in the woods. So this one morning, late October it had to be, because the leaves were mostly down and the air was biting cold, I was heading out. Headlamp on, backpack with my trapping gear, and a small .22 rifle, Bella trotting right beside me, tail wagging like crazy. She loved the woods as much as I did. It was pitch black, obviously. Headlamp beam cutting through the darkness, making everything else seem even blacker around the edges. The air was cold, crisp. You could smell the damp earth and pine needles real strong, that clean, woodsy smell. Usually the woods were noisy at that time of morning. You'd hear owls hooting way off, maybe a raccoon rustling in the leaves, squirrels chattering even before sunrise, just the normal sounds of nighttime critters getting ready for day. But this morning, it was quiet, eerily quiet. Right from the start, something felt off, like a prickle on the back of my neck, that feeling you get when you know someone's staring at you even though you can't see them. I tried to shake it off, told myself it was just the dark, playing tricks on my mind, but it wouldn't go away. Bella, she picked up on it before I really did. She was trotting along, then she slowed down, head up, nose twitching. She let out a low growl deep in her chest. Not like she was growling at a squirrel or something. This was different. This was a serious warning growl. I stopped walking, heart starting to thump a little harder in my chest. "What is it, girl?" I whispered, shining my headlamp around. Nothing. Just trees, shadows, leaves on the ground, the usual wood stuff. But Bella was still growling, low and steady, and she was looking, not ahead, but behind us. Her eyes were fixed on the darkness behind our backs. That's when I really started to feel it. That cold, crawling feeling. Like something was out there, watching us, and it wasn't friendly. The silence got heavier, if that makes sense, like it was pressing down on you. All the normal little rustles and sounds of the woods just vanished, completely gone, just dead, silent woods. And Bella's growling getting a little louder, a little more frantic. She started taking small steps backward, keeping her eyes locked on whatever was behind us in the dark. I spun around, my breath catching in my throat. I swept the headlamp beam back and forth, trying to pierce the blackness. Still nothing, just trees and shadows. "Bella, what is it?" I said again, my voice a little shaky this time. She whined softly, still backing away, her growls turning into little whimpers now and then, mixed with the low rumble. She was scared. And Bella wasn't scared of anything. Raccoons, skunks, even deer. She'd stand her ground against anything, but she was terrified now. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Heavy footsteps, coming from deeper in the woods behind us, getting closer fast, not like deer running or even a bear. These were heavy, deliberate steps, like something big was moving, and it wasn't trying to be quiet. Each footfall crunched on the leaves and snapped twigs. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Getting closer and closer. My heart went into overdrive, pounding in my chest, hammering in my ears. Adrenaline shot through me like electricity. Fear, real gut-wrenching fear, grabbed me by the throat. I knew in that instant something was terribly wrong. This wasn't normal. This wasn't an animal I knew. This was something else. I ripped the backpack off my shoulders and scrambled for the flashlight I kept in the side pocket. It was a big one, with a serious beam, way brighter than the headlamp. Fumbling in the dark with cold, shaky hands, I finally got it out and flicked it on. Whoosh! A powerful beam of white light sliced through the darkness. I swung the flashlight beam towards where the footsteps were coming from, my hand shaking so bad the light danced all over the place. Trees, trees, more trees, and then, there, in the distance, back in the deeper shadows, the beam caught on something. Two shapes, tall shapes, vaguely human-like shapes, standing still, just watching. They were maybe, I don't know, a good 100 yards back, maybe more, but even in the dim light they looked huge, towering. My breath hitched. What the hell? I tried to focus the light to get a better look, but my hands were shaking so badly it was hard to hold the beam steady. And then, as I swept the light a little wider, I saw it. Closer, much closer, just off to the side of the path, maybe only 30-40 feet away. Another shape, different. This one wasn't just a vague outline. This one was fur-covered, massive, and it was moving, slowly, deliberately, coming towards us. The flashlight beam flickered across its face for just a fraction of a second, but it was enough. I saw it. A monstrous head, wide, flat face, covered in dark fur like a dog or something else, but wrong, all wrong. And the eyes, dear God, the eyes, burning red, reflecting the flashlight beam like hot coals in the dark. Just 2 points of burning red light staring right at me. That's when the panic hit. Full force, like a punch to the gut. Everything went ice cold. My mind just screamed, run! Instinct, pure animal terror, took over. I didn't think, didn't plan, didn't hesitate. I just reacted. I shoved Bella ahead of me, yelling, "Go, Bella, go, run!" I turned and sprinted, back the way we'd come, away from those things, away from those eyes. Bella, bless her heart, she was right there with me. She didn't hesitate either. She was yelping now, sharp, panicked yelps, running full out beside me, her paws pounding on the leaf-covered ground. We tore through the woods, branches whipping at my face, thorns tearing at my clothes, but I didn't feel anything. Just the burning in my lungs, the pounding of my heart, the absolute terror pushing me forward. I didn't look back, not even once. I could hear them, though, the footsteps, still heavy, still crunching on the leaves, behind us, following, but different now, not deliberate anymore, faster, pounding, like they were chasing us, like it was chasing us. The woods were a blur of black trees and ground rushing past. I just ran, blind, desperate to get away. I knew there was a field not too far back, a pasture fence I'd have to jump, but then maybe we'd be safe. Maybe in the open it wouldn't follow, or maybe it would. I didn't know. I just ran. The sounds behind us got closer, the heavy footsteps, the snapping twigs, and then a sound I will never forget. A scream, not like anything human, not like any animal I've ever heard. A high-pitched, ear-splitting shriek filled with rage and something else, something ancient and evil. It echoed through the trees, bounced off the darkness, and went right through me, vibrating in my bones. It was the most terrifying sound I have ever heard in my life. Bella yelped again, louder this time, and she surged ahead of me, pulling at the leash I still instinctively held in my hand. She knew we had to get out. She knew. Finally, I saw it. Faintly through the trees, a lighter patch of sky, the edge of the woods, the pasture fence. I pushed harder, legs burning, lungs screaming, but I kept going. We burst out of the trees and into the open field. There it was, the barbed wire fence, 5 strands strung tight between wooden posts, too high to jump cleanly. No time to find a gate. I knew I had to go under. I dropped to my knees, heart hammering so hard I thought it would explode. I held the bottom wire up with one hand and shoved Bella under with the other. "Go! Under! Go!" She scrambled through, yelping, and bolted out into the field. Then I went. Dropped to my stomach, wriggled under the bottom wire, barbed wire scraping at my back, tearing my jacket. But I didn't care. Just get through. Get out. Get away. I scrambled to my feet on the other side of the fence, stumbled, almost fell, but caught myself. I kept running. Across the open field, towards the dim lights of the town in the distance. I didn't stop running until I was halfway across that field, out in the wide open, nothing but sky above me and grass under my feet. Only then, when I was panting, gasping for air, legs shaking so bad I could barely stand, did I finally dare to look back, towards the woods, towards Black Creek Woods. Still black, still silent, except for that sound. Fainter now, distant, but still there. That scream, echoing from the trees, that unearthly, terrifying shriek. And then, silence. Just the wind rustling through the grass in the field, and my own ragged breathing. I stood there, frozen, staring back at the woods, waiting, expecting to see something come crashing out of the trees, chasing us across the field. But nothing came, just the silent, dark woods. Bella was beside me now, nudging my hand, whining softly. She was trembling too. We just stood there for what felt like forever, both of us staring at the woods, listening, waiting. Nothing, just silence, and the fading echo of that scream still ringing in my ears. Eventually, slowly, my breathing started to even out. The pounding in my chest slowed down a little. The terror, it didn't go away, not really, but it dulled just a bit. We walked back to town then, me and Bella in the growing pre-dawn light, the woods behind us silent and still, seeming almost normal. But I knew what we had seen, what we had heard, what had chased us through those woods. I never went back to Black Creek Woods to trap again, not ever, not even in daylight. Jebediah asked me once why I stopped running my line there. I just told him the trapping wasn't good, that the animals had moved on. He just nodded, that knowing look in his eyes again. I think, maybe, he knew more than he let on. I still have nightmares sometimes, not often anymore, but they still come. And in those dreams, I'm back in those woods, headlamp beam cutting through the dark, Bella growling at my side, and I hear those footsteps, heavy, getting closer, and I see those eyes, burning red in the darkness, and I hear that scream, and I run, and I run. I don't know what it was we saw that morning. I don't want to know. Some things are better left in the shadows. Some doors once opened can never be closed, and that morning in Black Creek Woods, that door opened for me, and it stayed open ever since. Story 4. The ad didn't mention how remote it was, like really remote. Drove for hours after leaving the highway, up these winding dirt roads, rocks flying everywhere, suspensions screaming for mercy. Finally got to this place, or well, where the place was supposed to be. Nothing but trees, sky, and these jagged, mean-looking mountains all around. And this house, freshly built, smack dab in the middle of nowhere. Beautiful in a way, but isolated. Man, isolated doesn't even begin to cover it. I was planning on sleeping in my truck, saved money on motels, you know? Just work all day, crash in the cab, wake up, repeat. First night, I was beat. Painting all day, prepping, just physical work. You're tired. But I couldn't sleep, not really. Felt like eyes were on me, even inside the truck. Silly, right? Out in the middle of nowhere, miles from anything. But that feeling, like I was being watched, it was intense. I kept glancing around, you know, turning my head fast, trying to catch something in the dark. Nothing, just trees, shadows, the black sky. But the feeling wouldn't go away. I was restless, kept tossing and turning, exhausted, body screaming for sleep, but my mind wired, like something was right outside, breathing down my neck. Next day, same thing. That feeling of being watched, it was creeping me out. By lunchtime, I was officially paranoid, started imagining things in the trees, shadows moving, branches snapping when there wasn't any wind. So I did something maybe kind of dumb, but I was losing it. I had some masking tape and some brown paper in the truck for windows. Figured, screw it. If something is out there, maybe it'll give me a break if it can't see in. So I spent like an hour taping up all the truck windows from the inside, made it like a brown paper bag on wheels. Stupid? Probably. Did it make me feel a tiny bit better? Yeah, maybe a little. Placebo effect, whatever. That night, I actually managed to fall asleep for a few hours, dead tired from another day of painting, and then I woke up, fast, like someone dumped ice water on me. The truck was shaking, rocking violently. At first I thought it was the wind. Whisper Wind Mountains. Wind makes sense, right? But then I listened. Dead silence outside. Not even a breeze. Nothing rustling the leaves. Just stillness. And the truck still rocking. Hard, like someone was trying to, I don't know, push it over? Or just playing with it? It was a weird rhythmic rocking, not like wind would do, more like deliberate. My heart started hammering in my chest. Fear, real cold fear, started crawling up my spine. I didn't want to open the door, didn't want to look outside, but come on, staying inside a shaking truck in the middle of nowhere, that's dumb too. Plus, honestly, I had to pee. Nature calling, even when you're scared stiff. So, I fumbled around for my flashlight, the small one I keep on my keychain, clicked it on, that weak little beam, cutting through the dark inside the cab. Took a deep breath, unlocked the door, and pushed it open slowly. The rocking stopped the instant the door creaked open. Stopped dead, stepped out, pitch black, like absolute black. No moon, no stars, just darkness you could taste. The flashlight beam was useless, swallowed up by the night after like 2 feet. And the silence. Oh God, the silence. It wasn't just quiet. It was empty. No crickets, no owls, no night birds, no wind in the trees, nothing. Just nothing. Like the whole world had just stopped breathing. That silence, more than the rocking, more than the feeling of being watched, that silence. That was when real terror hit. Something was wrong, terribly, fundamentally wrong. I did my business fast, keeping the little flashlight pointed at the ground right in front of me, didn't dare point it further out, didn't want to see what might be there. Got back inside the truck, slammed the door shut, locked it and sat there breathing hard. The rocking didn't come back, but the silence stayed. And the feeling was 10 times worse now, like something had been there right next to the truck, and it was just waiting, watching, sleep. Forget about it. I sat there, cramped in the driver's seat, papered windows doing absolutely nothing to help my nerves, just listening to the silence and the frantic thump-thump of my own heart. Waited for dawn, like it was rescue itself. The next 2 days were hell. The feeling never left. Painting became mechanical, just going through the motions, my eyes constantly flicking around, scanning the trees. Every shadow seemed to move, every snap of a twig sounded like footsteps. I jumped at every little noise, couldn't eat much, just felt on edge, raw, waiting for something to happen. Nights were worse. Tried to sleep in the truck again, papered windows and all. But every creak of the metal, every rustle of leaves, sounded like something approaching. I'd wake up at the slightest sound, heart racing, sweat cold on my skin. Sleepless nights stacked up, exhaustion grinding me down, but fear keeping me wide awake. I started seeing things in the shadows, imagined shapes in the trees. Just pure paranoia, I told myself. Just stress, just tiredness. But I didn't believe it. Not really. By the 4th day, I was falling apart. Couldn't focus on the painting anymore. Hands were shaking. I was dropping brushes, messing up lines. The guy who hired me, the general contractor, showed up to check on progress. He saw me, the state I was in, asked what was wrong. I tried to brush it off, said I was just tired, the altitude, whatever. He gave me this look like he knew something was up. He was a big, weathered guy, seen things, I could tell. "You look like you haven't slept in days, Javier," he said, his voice rough but not unkind. "This place, it gets to people sometimes. Remote, you know." I just nodded. Didn't want to tell him about the rocking truck, the silence, the feeling of being watched. He'd think I was nuts. Then he said, "Look, I got an RV parked over by the equipment shed. Not hooked up or anything, but bigger than your truck at least. More room. Maybe you'd sleep better in there. Got a lockable door, solid walls." Sliver of hope. Solid walls. A lockable door. Anything was better than that truck. I practically jumped at it. Thanked him like he'd just offered me $1 million. He showed me the RV. Old, beat up, but dry and relatively clean inside. Had a bed, a small kitchen area, even a tiny bathroom. Felt like a palace after the truck cab. I moved my stuff over, feeling a little better, a little safer for the first time in days. Maybe this would help. Solid walls, you know. That evening, dusk started to settle. Painting light was fading, so I packed up my brushes, cleaned them, ready to call it a day. Walked back to the RV. The air was getting cooler, the shadows longer. And then I heard it. Faint sound. Coming from the ravine behind the house. Deep ravine, dropped straight down into the trees. Couldn't see the bottom from up top. The sound, it was rhythmic, like wood knocking. Thump, thump, thump. Faint, barely audible at first, but then louder, more distinct. Thump, thump, thump. My blood went cold again. That feeling of dread, that icy fear rushed back, stronger than ever. I stood there frozen, listening. Thump, 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 regular even, like a heartbeat, but wood, knocking on wood, in the ravine, at dusk. Stupidity, or maybe just morbid curiosity, took over. I told myself it was probably just a branch falling, hitting a tree trunk down in the ravine. Natural sound, echoing up, trying to rationalize it, even though every fiber of my being screamed that something was wrong. I grabbed the flashlight from the RV, the bigger one this time, the Gongshiyong kind that throws a decent beam, and I walked towards the edge of the ravine. Slowly, each step felt heavy, like walking through mud. Thump, thump, thump. The sound kept coming, steady, rhythmic, from down in the darkness. Got to the edge, looked down into the ravine, black hole. Couldn't see anything, just deep, swallowing darkness. Pointed the flashlight down, but the beam didn't even begin to reach the bottom. Just disappeared into the void. Thump, thump, thump. Closer now, or maybe just louder. Definitely coming from down there. And then, I don't know why I did it. Maybe just wanting to break the tension, to prove to myself it was nothing. Stupidity. Pure stupidity. I took a deep breath, and I did an elk call. I know how to do elk calls. Learned it years ago, hunting with my uncle. It's a high-pitched bugling sound. Calls out to the elk, echoes through the mountains. I let out a long, loud elk call, aimed down into the ravine. The sound ripped through the silence, echoing off the canyon walls. And for a second, nothing. Just the fading echo of the call. And then, hell broke loose. The sound started as a crash. Deep in the ravine, down in the darkness, something started crashing through the undergrowth. Snapping branches, breaking trees, tearing through the brush like a bulldozer, coming closer, fast, moving up the ravine wall. Towards me. I froze. Flashlight shaking in my hand, beam dancing wildly. The crashing got louder, closer. Whatever it was big, really big. The sound was violent, furious, like something enormous and enraged was tearing its way through the woods. And then it happened. The crashing stopped, abruptly, just gone. Silence again. But not the empty silence from before. This silence was charged, heavy, threatening, and then it was on the rim rock, right below me. The ravine wall wasn't straight down, it was rocky, rimrock ledges and cliffs. And whatever it was, it had scaled that impossible slope in seconds, in complete darkness, and now it was right there, below me, on the rocks. I could hear it breathing, heavy, ragged breaths. And then it screamed. Not like an animal scream, not like anything I've ever heard. A sound that ripped through the night, tore through my brain, froze my blood solid. Aggressive, furious, unhuman. A scream of pure rage and something else, something ancient and evil. It was the most terrifying sound I have ever heard in my life. It wasn't just loud, it was wrong. It vibrated in my bones, made my teeth ache, made my vision blur. The scream went on, echoing through the canyons, bouncing off the mountains, filling the world with this unholy sound. I couldn't move, paralyzed, frozen solid, every muscle locked. Flashlight fell from my numb fingers, clattering on the rocks and going out. I was standing there in the pitch black, deafened by that scream, unable to breathe, unable to even blink. Just standing there, listening to that monstrous sound tear through the night. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the screaming stopped, cut off, like someone had flipped a switch. Silence again. But now, a different silence. A silence of aftermath. A silence of waiting. I stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably just minutes. Heart hammering like a trapped bird, ears ringing, body shaking uncontrollably. Couldn't see anything, couldn't hear anything except my own ragged breaths. Finally, slowly, agonizingly slowly, my legs started to work again. I stumbled backwards, away from the ravine edge, back towards the RV. Every step felt like wading through concrete. Got inside, slammed the door, locked it, fumbled for the light switch, flicked it on. The weak RV light felt blindingly bright. I stood there in the middle of the RV, shaking, sweating, gasping for air, trying to understand what I had just heard, what I had just encountered. Elk. No elk screams like that. Mountain lion? Bear? No, absolutely not. This was something else, something not natural. Not of this world. I knew it. In that moment of pure terror, listening to that scream, I knew deep in my soul that I had stumbled across something monstrous, something ancient, something that should not exist, something that lived in those mountains, in that darkness, in that ravine. I didn't sleep that night either, or any night after that up there. Every shadow in the RV seemed to writhe. Every creak of the old metal sounded like footsteps outside. The wood knocking started again, faintly from the ravine, every night at dusk. But I never went near that ravine again, never made another sound, just stayed inside, locked the door, and waited for morning. I finished the job, somehow, just went through the motions, paintbrush in hand, dead inside. The feeling of being watched never left, the fear never lessened. Every day, every night was a living hell. Counting down the hours until I could get out of those mountains. When the job was done, I packed up my truck and I drove, didn't look back. Didn't stop driving until I was miles and miles away from those mountains, back in Silverwood, back in the noise and the lights and the people, back in reality, or what I thought was reality before Whisperwind Mountains. I still paint, still take jobs, but something changed up there, something broke in me. I still get that feeling sometimes, even here in the city. Late at night when it's quiet, I feel like eyes are on me. And sometimes, just for a second, I think I hear it. Faintly in the distance, thump, thump, thump. Wood knocking. I tell myself it's just my imagination. Stress. Post-traumatic whatever. But I know what I heard up there. I know what screamed in those canyons. And I know deep down that whatever it was, it's still out there, in those mountains, watching, waiting, and I have no idea what it was, or why it was there, or anything. Just that scream that still echoes in my nightmares. And the silence that followed, I can't explain it, and I don't think I ever will be able to. It just happened, and it's still here, inside me. Story 5. It was last fall, late October, perfect hunting weather, crisp air, leaves turning all shades of red and gold. I went up to Redwood National Forest, place I know like the back of my hand. Been hunting there since I was a kid with my dad. I'm not some newbie, you know. I know the woods, I know the sounds of the woods, and I know animals. That's important to remember. I'm not some city slicker who freaks out at a deer. I brought my hounds with me, Blue, Red, and Duke, best walkers you'll ever find. They can track anything, and they got noses like you wouldn't believe. We got up there late afternoon, set up camp a ways off the logging roads, deep enough in so it was quiet, just the sounds of the forest. Made a fire, cooked some dinner, and let the dogs run around a bit, getting their bearings. As soon as it started getting dark, the woods really came alive. Crickets chirping, owls hooting in the distance, the wind rustling through those giant redwoods. You know, that familiar forest noise. It's usually peaceful, comforting even. Not that night. We started out just after moonrise. Moon was full or close enough, casting everything in this eerie, silvery light. Perfect for night hunting, or at least that's what I thought. I was tracking deer, figuring they'd be out feeding in the open patches. Dogs were on leashes, pulling and eager. We went deeper and deeper, following this faint trail I'd picked up earlier. Then Blue started to whine, low and excited. He'd picked up a stronger scent. I unleashed them, told them to go get 'em, and they took off like rockets, baying and barking, their voices echoing through the trees. Sounded good, sounded normal. Hunting. I followed behind, slower pace, listening to the hounds work. Their barking was getting fainter as they went further into the woods. I figured they were pushing something, and I'd catch up soon enough. I found a fallen redwood log, huge thing, must have been down for decades, all mossy and soft. Sat down on it to catch my breath and listen for the dogs. The baying was distant now, really far off. Probably running the deer miles away, happens sometimes. I wasn't worried. They always come back. It was quiet again, too quiet almost, even for the woods at night. The crickets had stopped chirping. The wind seemed to die down completely. Just silence. And that silence felt heavy, like something was holding its breath. I didn't like it. Then it happened. A snap. Sharp and loud, like a thick branch breaking right behind me. I jumped, turned around quick, rifle up and ready. Heart pounding in my chest. Figured it was a deer, maybe come back on my trail. But there was nothing there, just trees, shadows, moonlight filtering through the branches. I stood there for a minute, listening, scanning the darkness, my senses on high alert. Nothing. Probably just a branch falling, right? Woods are full of noises. Just jumpy, that's all. I was about to turn back around to keep listening for the dogs when I heard it. Not another snap, but a different sound. Low, guttural, like growling, but not like any animal growl I'd ever heard. Deeper, raspier, almost vocal. And it was coming from the same direction as the snap, behind me, deeper in the trees. My blood ran cold, instantly. Every hair on my arms stood on end. This wasn't deer, this wasn't bear, this was something else, something I didn't recognize. And it felt wrong. The woods felt different all of a sudden, hostile, like I wasn't supposed to be there. Then I saw the dogs. They came tearing back through the trees, not barking anymore, not baying, just whimpering, low, terrified whimpers. And they weren't running past me, back the way we came. They were running to me, cowering. They squeezed in behind me, practically climbing up my back legs, shaking so hard I could feel it through my boots. Blue was tucked behind my left leg, Red behind my right, and Duke, usually the bravest of the three, was pushing his head into my back, whining like a scared puppy. These dogs aren't scared of anything in the woods. Bears, mountain lions, coyotes, you name it, they'll chase it or stand their ground. I've seen them face down a black bear before without flinching, but they were terrified now. truly, gut-wrenchingly terrified, and whatever had them scared had to be bad, real bad. I whipped around again, rifle raised, safety off, finger on the trigger. My heart was hammering in my chest now, deafening. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, making my hands tremble slightly. The growling sound was closer now, and there were other sounds too. Heavy footsteps, breaking branches, rustling in the underbrush, moving towards me. Something big was coming. And then I saw them, through the trees. They stepped into a small clearing bathed in moonlight. Figures, big figures, tall, dark, moving upright. At first, my mind couldn't process it. It just couldn't. I blinked, trying to clear my vision, thinking it must be shadows, tricks of the light, my eyes playing games in the dark. But they were still there, getting closer. 4 of them, 4 massive shapes moving through the trees with incredible speed and purpose. As they came fully into the clearing, the moonlight fell directly on them, and I saw them clearly, too clearly. Apes. They looked like apes, but not apes like in the zoo, not chimpanzees or gorillas. Bigger, way bigger, and different, more human-like, but twisted, primitive, monstrous. 2 were huge, towering figures, clearly males. 1 was slightly smaller, female maybe, and the last one was smaller again, younger, like a juvenile, a family of things. They were covered in dark, matted fur, almost black in the moonlight. Their faces were heavy, brutal, deep-set eyes that seemed to reflect the moonlight with a cold, intelligent gleam. Massive shoulders, long arms that swung loosely as they walked upright, effortlessly, even gracefully. These weren't animals stumbling on 2 legs. They were built to walk like that. They chose to walk like that. The guttural sounds were coming from them, low rumbles and clicks and snarls that sounded like language, but not human language. Something older, something primal. They kept coming closer, no hesitation, no fear, just advancing, straight towards me, towards us. My dogs were practically vibrating with terror behind me, their whimpers turning into choked yelps. I could feel their hot breath on my neck, their bodies pressed against my legs, trembling violently. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at me to turn and run, to get out of there, to put as much distance as possible between me and those things. But my legs were frozen. My feet were rooted to the spot. I was paralyzed by fear. They stopped when they were maybe 20 feet away. 20 feet. That's nothing. Close enough to see the details, close enough to smell them. A musky, earthy, wild animal smell, but stronger, more pungent, mixed with something else. Something almost metallic, like wet fur and old blood. It was sickening. The largest male, the biggest one of the group, stood directly in front, blocking the others slightly behind him. He was huge, easily 7, maybe 8 feet tall. Massive chest and shoulders, arms like tree trunks, hands like shovels with thick, blunt fingers. His face was unforgettable. Heavy brow ridge, flat nose, wide mouth with teeth that looked too big, too sharp. Eyes that burned into mine, intelligent and predatory. He tilted his massive head to one side, studying me. Not like an animal looks at prey, but like he was assessing me, judging me, understanding me. It was the eyes. The eyes were the worst. Too human, but not human. Something else, something more. Then he did something that chilled me to the bone. He inhaled, deeply, sucked in a huge breath of air, sniffing me, sniffing the air around me. And I realized he was smelling me, smelling my fear, smelling me, like an animal scenting its prey. His eyes locked onto mine again, and I knew with a certainty that went beyond fear that I was looking at something that could kill me, easily, rip me apart, devour me, and it wanted to. I could feel it. In his eyes, in the tension in his massive body, in the guttural rumble that vibrated in his chest. I was dead. That was it. This was how it ended. In the middle of the Redwood Forest, face to face with monsters. I closed my eyes for a split second, just braced for it, for the attack, for the teeth, the claws, the pain. But it didn't come. Instead, I heard a different sound, a soft, almost murmuring sound, low and gentle. It was coming from the female, the slightly smaller one. I opened my eyes slowly. The big male hadn't moved, still staring at me, intense, predatory. But the female had stepped forward slightly, and she was doing something. She was reaching out, hesitantly, almost gently, and touching the big male's arm. Just a touch. And she was speaking. Not in words I could understand. Not human words. But it was speaking. Soft, low sounds, clicks and whistles and guttural murmurs, like she was reasoning with him, calming him down, and to my absolute shock, it seemed to work. The big male hesitated. The tension in his body seemed to lessen, just a fraction. His gaze shifted slightly. Not off me completely, but distracted. And that's when I realized it. What she was doing, what she was looking at. My rifle. The Remington 700 slung over my shoulder, the one I'd been holding ready to fire just moments before. She'd seen it. She understood what it was. And she was stopping him. I stared at the rifle, then back at them, back at the female. She met my gaze just for a second. Her eyes were different, still intelligent, still wild, but there was something else there too. Something almost pleading. Or maybe it was just my imagination. Maybe I was projecting human emotions onto something that was utterly, terrifyingly inhuman. But then the big male turned. Just turned his massive body away from me, and the female did too, and the juvenile, and the other male. They all turned and moved into the trees, just like that, as quickly and silently as they'd appeared, melting back into the shadows, gone. 1 second they were there, massive, menacing, terrifying, the next second nothing. Just the rustling of leaves, the faint sounds of the forest returning, the silence slowly breaking apart. And my dogs, still trembling behind me, but quieter now. Their fear lessened. I stood there for what felt like forever, not moving, barely breathing, rifle still raised, staring into the darkness where they'd disappeared, waiting for them to come back, waiting for something. But nothing happened. They were gone. Really gone. Slowly, shaking, I lowered my rifle. My legs were weak, like jelly. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold the gun. I could taste bile in my throat. I was sweating, even though the night air was cold. I was wrecked. I finally managed to move, to turn around, to stumble back the way we'd come. Dogs followed, still close, still nervous, but calmer. We practically ran back to camp. Didn't stop until I had a fire blazing and was inside my tent, zipped up tight, rifle loaded and right beside me. I didn't sleep that night. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves, every hoot of an owl made me jump. I kept seeing their eyes in my mind, especially the big male's eyes, predatory, cold, and the female's eyes, with that plea, understanding, whatever it was. Morning came slow and grey. I packed up camp as fast as I could. Dogs were still jumpy, wouldn't go far from my side. We walked out of those woods as quickly as we could, didn't even hunt that day, just left. I haven't been back to that part of the Redwood Forest since. I hunt other places now, further south, away from them. And I still have nightmares sometimes. Not often, but enough. Nightmares about those eyes, about that smell, about the sheer terror of being face to face with something unknown, something that shouldn't exist, but does. And I know, deep down, I know for a fact that if I hadn't had that rifle with me, slung over my shoulder, it would have been a very different story. I wouldn't be here telling you this. That female, she saved me, or at least she stopped him, and I don't know why. Maybe she was protecting her young. Maybe she was just smarter than I gave them credit for. Maybe she understood what that rifle was. I don't know. I don't understand any of it. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And I know I'll never forget it, never. I'm still shaken by it years later. Sometimes late at night when it's quiet and the wind is blowing, I hear things, just sounds in the woods. But sometimes they sound like those voices, those low guttural rumbles, and I get that same cold feeling in my gut, that same fear. Because I know they're out there, still out there, watching, listening, and I got way too close, way too close. Story 6. Okay, so this happened years ago when I was just a kid. I must have been 10, maybe 11. It's all blurry now, but the feeling, man, that's still crystal clear. It's weird how some memories just stick, you know, like burned onto your brain. This one, it's like a cold brand. It was summer camp, Camp Hemlock. Sounds all woodsy and fun, right? And it mostly was. Canoeing on the lake, making lanyards, the usual cheesy camp stuff. But Hemlock was right next to this forest everyone talked about. Whispering pines. Even the counselors talked about it in hushed voices, like it was some kind of haunted place. Not haunted in a ghost way, more like just bad juju kind of haunted. Old. Deep. You got that feeling just looking at it from the edge of camp, especially when the sun started to go down. The trees were so tall, they just sucked up all the light. My older brother Ben, he was at the same camp, but he was in the older kids' cabins, way on the other side of the place. He was like 14, so worlds apart in kid years. I missed him, even though he mostly just teased me when we hung out. But camp was still new. I hadn't really clicked with any of the guys in my cabin yet. I guess I was a little homesick too, even though I'd never admit it then. One evening, it was maybe the 3rd or 4th day of camp after dinner, we had sloppy joes. I remember that for some reason. I decided I was going to go see Ben. Everyone was still buzzing around from dinner, playing frisbee near the mess hall, that kind of stuff. The sun was already dipping down, and those long shadows were starting to stretch across the field, making everything look different, kind of spooky already. The counselors were busy with their own things. Nobody really noticed me sneaking off. The path to the older cabins wasn't lit or anything. It was just a dirt track that wound through the trees, getting darker and darker as you went. By the time I got past the main camp area and properly into the woods, the light was almost gone. It was that in-between time, when it's not quite night but not day anymore either. Everything was turning shades of grey and purple. And quiet. Man, it was quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind where your ears start to ring because there's just nothing. No crickets, no frogs, barely even the wind in the leaves. Just heavy, thick silence. I kept walking, trying not to go too fast, trying not to trip over roots or rocks in the path. I had a little keychain flashlight, the kind with the tiny bulb that barely throws any light, but I kept it off, trying to let my eyes adjust to the dimness. I figured the cabin lights would guide me once I got closer. And then I saw it. Up ahead, through the trees, a warm, yellowish glow. Ben's cabin. Relief hit me like a wave. I picked up my pace a little, eager to get there, maybe bum a candy bar off him, or just hear some older kid stories. That's when it happened. Just as I rounded a bend in the path, where the trees thinned out a bit, and I could see the cabin clearly. It was one of those log cabins, with a big window facing the path. I saw them. They were right at the edge of the trees, just where the woods met the little clearing around the cabin. Two shapes darker than the shadows themselves, just peeling away from the tree line. At first, I didn't really register what I was seeing. My brain couldn't quite process it. It was like when you see something out of the corner of your eye, and you're not sure if you actually saw it, or if it was just a trick of the light. But this wasn't like that. This was solid, massive. Instinct just took over. I dropped to the ground, went into this crouch without even thinking, back pressed against the trunk of a thick pine tree, heart slamming in my chest like a trapped bird. And I just stared. The light from the cabin window was spilling out bright and warm, and it backlit these things, these figures. They were huge. I mean, huge. Even crouching down as low as I could go, I was looking up at them. They were silhouetted against the cabin light, so I couldn't see details, not really. But the shapes were burned into my memory. Two of them. The one closest to me on the left was taller, like way taller. I remember thinking, even in that moment of pure terror, that it had to be at least 9 feet tall, maybe more. It was just immense, broad shoulders, like a linebacker times 10. Its head was kind of rounded, and it was just thick. Everything about it was thick. The other one was shorter, but still massive, maybe 7 feet tall, maybe a little less, but just as wide, just as bulky. They weren't like bears or people, not like anything I had ever seen or imagined. They were other, completely different. They were just standing there at the edge of the trees, facing the cabin, almost like they were watching it, and they were slowly lumbering forward, not walking normally, not like humans, more like shifting their weight, heavy, deliberate movements, like they weighed a ton, like each step was a huge effort, but also inevitable. They moved closer to the path, towards me. I could hear the faint rustle of leaves and pine needles under their feet, even over the pounding of my own heart. It was a dry, crunching sound, like branches snapping, even though I couldn't see anything actually breaking. Just the weight of them, I guess. Frozen. That's the only word for it. I was completely frozen. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I couldn't even blink, I think. Just staring up at these two monstrous shapes moving closer and closer. The warm light from the cabin seemed to make them even darker, more menacing. They were shadows taking form, nightmares stepping out of the woods. Time stretched out. Each second felt like a minute, each minute like an hour. I was trapped there, crouching in the dirt, watching these things come closer. I don't know how long it went on, maybe only a few minutes, maybe longer. It felt like forever. And then, something stupid. Something a little kid would do when they're scared and desperate and their brain just short-circuits. I called out, "Ben?" Just a whisper, barely audible, my voice choked and shaky. But in that absolute silence, it must have carried. The effect was instant. They stopped, just like that, like someone had flicked a switch, both of them, frozen in mid-lumber. And then they turned, slowly, deliberately. Those massive heads, those dark, shapeless heads swung in my direction. Towards me, even in the shadows, I could feel something from them. Not eyes, not exactly, but a presence, a weight of attention. It was like being stared at by something ancient, something that had been in those woods for 1,000 years and didn't like being disturbed. For what felt like an eternity, they just stood there, heads turned towards me, silhouetted against the cabin light, their forms still huge, still terrifying. And then they started to move again, but not towards me, not towards the cabin, backwards, towards the trees. Slowly, deliberately, they started to melt back into the darkness they had emerged from. Step by heavy step, they retreated. And as they moved deeper into the shadows, something weird happened. It was like they just dissolved. Not like they walked behind trees, more like the darkness swallowed them. They just became part of the shadows again, blending in until they were gone. Poof! 1 second they were there, these massive looming figures, and the next, nothing. Just trees and shadows and that heavy, oppressive silence. It was so sudden, so complete. Like they had never been there at all. Except, I knew they had been. I had seen them. I had felt the fear, cold and sharp, grip me like ice. The adrenaline hit then. All the terror, all the stillness, suddenly snapped, and I just exploded into movement. I scrambled to my feet, turned around, and ran. Ran like I had never run before. Back down that path, tripping over roots, branches whipping my face, heart hammering, breath coming in ragged gasps. I didn't even look back. Didn't dare to. I just ran, blind panic pushing me forward, away from that cabin, away from those woods, away from them. I didn't stop running until I burst out of the trees and into the open field of the main camp area. People were still milling around, laughing, talking. Everything was bright and normal and safe. It was like stepping out of a nightmare back into reality. I stumbled back to my cabin, practically collapsed onto my bunk, and just lay there, panting, shaking. My cabin mates were still out somewhere, probably at the campfire or something. Good. I didn't want to see anyone, didn't want to talk. I stayed silent the rest of camp. Didn't tell anyone, not my cabin mates, not the counselors, not even Ben when I finally saw him the next day at breakfast. He just teased me about looking pale. I just shrugged and pretended I was tired. Who would believe me anyway? 2 giant things in the woods? Sounded crazy, and I started to doubt myself too even then. Maybe it was just shadows playing tricks on my eyes. Maybe it was just something else, something normal. But my kid brain blew it out of proportion because I was already spooked by the Whispering Pine stories. But deep down, I knew what I had seen. I knew what I had felt. That primal, bone-deep terror. That wasn't just shadows. That was real. Those things were real. I never went near the woods again at camp, stuck to the main areas, stayed with the group, made sure I was never alone when it started to get dark. And for years afterwards, I couldn't shake it. Those images, those shapes, they were always there in the back of my mind. Beings. That's what I secretly called them in my head, because figures or creatures sounded too movie-like. Beans was just a dumb kid word, but it felt more real somehow, more personal to my own fear. I never forgot them, and the weirdest thing is, it didn't make me hate the woods or avoid them forever. Actually, it did the opposite. It kind of fascinated me. That fear, that mystery. It was like a hook, something that stayed with me, pulled at me, made me wonder, what were they? What else is out there in the dark places, in the places we don't understand? I don't know. I still don't know. Years have passed. I've gone back to that camp area as an adult, hiking. Whispering Pines Forest is still there. Still looks just as dark and deep and watchful. I've walked those paths again, in broad daylight. And at dusk, even at night, with a flashlight, heart pounding a little harder than it should. Never seen them again. Never seen anything like them. Maybe it was a one-time thing. Maybe it was just my imagination going wild that night. Maybe they're still out there in the shadows, waiting for the dark to come again. And honestly, part of me still wonders, still waits, still looks into the shadows sometimes, half expecting to see those shapes emerge again, hoping, maybe, and terrified at the same time, because whatever they were, whatever I saw, it wasn't something from this world. It was something else. And that's the part that chills me to the bone to this day. Just else. Story 7. It started as just another hike, you know? Like nothing special planned, just needed to get out of the house. Autumn in Pennsylvania is ridiculous, right? The leaves are doing that whole fire thing, oranges and reds and yellows, and the air gets crisp, that sharp bite that wakes you up. Hemlock Ridge. I'd been there a bunch of times. It's not crazy difficult, just enough to feel like you've actually done something, and the views are always worth it. Photography is kind of my thing. It's how I relax, how I see the world, I guess. So, I packed my gear, my usual backpack with water and snacks, you know the drill, and headed out. I remember it was probably around midday when I really got going. The parking lot at the trailhead wasn't too full, which I liked. Meant fewer people, more peace. I put in my earbuds, started playing some chill music, and began climbing. The first part is pretty easy, mostly flat, going through the woods, dappled sunlight hitting the trail. Everything was normal, birds chirping, squirrels darting around, that typical forest noise. I was taking pictures as I walked, the light filtering through the leaves, some close-ups of ferns, that sort of thing. As I climbed higher, the trail started getting steeper, rockier. I took my music down a little, just to be more aware of my footing. And that's when it started. That feeling, you know the one? Like eyes on you. Like someone is watching, even though you can't see anyone. It's not rational, I know, but it's just a gut thing. At first I tried to ignore it. Just the woods being woods, right? Shadows playing tricks, branches moving in the breeze, but it wouldn't go away. It was persistent. This prickling at the back of my neck, it wasn't like scary yet, more like uneasy. Like when you think you left the stove on, but you can't quite remember. Annoying and just a little unsettling. So I stopped. I took my earbuds out completely and just stood there on the trail. I let the silence of the mountain kind of wash over me, tried to really listen to what was around. At first it was just nothing much. The wind in the trees, leaves rustling, the distant sound of maybe a car way down in the valley. Typical mountain sounds. But the feeling, that stayed. And then I heard it. It was subtle, really subtle. A rustle, like leaves being moved, but not by the wind. Lower down the slope, uphill from me. Something was moving, but not like an animal, not like a deer crashing through the undergrowth. It was quieter, more deliberate somehow, intermittent. Rustle, then nothing. Rustle again after a pause. I told myself it was squirrels, probably just squirrels. They're always messing around in the leaves, right? But squirrels don't feel like that. They don't make you feel like you're being looked at. This was different. It was heavy, like attention, focused attention. I wanted to believe it was my imagination, playing tricks on me. I mean, I was alone, pretty high up, getting towards the peak. Maybe the altitude was getting to me. Nonsense, I told myself. I'm in good shape, it's not that high. Still, to try and shake it off, I turned away from uphill, facing downhill towards the valley stretching out in front of me. Figured I'd take some photos, focus on something else, get my mind off this weird feeling. The view was incredible. Golden afternoon light hitting the valley, long shadows starting to stretch out from the trees. Beautiful. I raised my camera, started adjusting the settings, trying to frame a shot of the distant hills, layered and hazy in the autumn air. Click, click, click. I was zooming in, playing with composition, trying to capture the depth of the landscape. And that's when it happened. That primal jolt, like a physical shock, ripped through me. Instinct, pure, raw gut instinct, screaming at me to turn around. I didn't even think, just whirled. Camera still in my hand, lens pointed down at the ground as I spun around. And I saw it, just for a split second. Behind a cluster of these massive boulders, grey and cold, bigger than cars, scattered like teeth across the mountainside. A flicker of movement, something dark, black, and a mass of black fur, moving fast, disappearing behind the rock, gone. It was so quick, so fleeting, but I saw it. Black fur, and the way it moved, fluid and low to the ground. It wasn't a deer, too dark, too compact. And then that icy dread, man, it hit me like a wave. Everything just went cold inside. This wasn't a bear. Bears around here are usually brown, for one thing. And they're definitely not active this late in the year. Hibernation, right? And this thing, it wasn't clumsy, it wasn't lumbering, it was fast and stealthy, slinking. My heart went into overdrive, pounding in my chest, hammering against my ribs. I stood there frozen, staring at those boulders, every nerve screaming at me. The image of that fleeting blackness seared into my mind. What was that? It couldn't have been my imagination. I saw it. Then fear kicked in, pure adrenaline-fueled terror. I didn't wait to analyze, didn't wait to figure it out, just instinct again. Get out! Run! I scrambled back from the edge of the trail, tripping over my own feet, stumbling over loose rocks, turning, scrambling over those same boulders I'd been standing near just moments ago, not even thinking about the camera still clutched in my hand. Downhill. I had to get downhill. Back to the trail, back to the parking lot, back to my car, back to anywhere but here. I started running. Not gracefully, not like in a movie. Just panicked, clumsy running, my breath catching in my throat, lungs burning, legs aching already. But I kept going, didn't dare to stop. Every shadow seemed to move. Every rustle of leaves now sounded like something stalking me. The woods, which had been peaceful and beautiful just minutes before, now felt menacing, alive, watching. I kept glancing back over my shoulder, terrified of what I might see. But there was nothing, just trees and shadows and the late afternoon sunlight slanting through the branches. But I felt it, still. That feeling of being watched, even more intensely now, like whatever it was still there, still following, keeping pace, unseen but present. I forced myself to keep running. The trail twisted and turned, switchbacks winding down the mountainside. Each turn I expected to see it, to see that black shape emerging from the trees, blocking my path. But there was nothing, only the silent forest, getting darker now as the sun sank lower. I pulled my camera up almost without thinking, just snapping pictures blindly as I ran. Click, 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 pointed towards the trees, towards the shadows, towards nothing really. But I had to do something, needed to feel like I was documenting something, even if I didn't know what. Maybe if I took pictures, I could look at them later, make sense of it. Ridiculous, I know, but that's what went through my head. The setting sun cast long, menacing fingers across the landscape, turning everything orange and deep purple. The shadows deepened, twisting familiar shapes into monstrous forms. Every tree trunk looked like a lurking figure, every bush like something crouched and waiting. My breath came in ragged gasps, my legs screamed with exhaustion, but I couldn't slow down. I kept pushing myself, driven by pure, unadulterated fear. The trail seemed to stretch on forever. Every twist and turn looked the same. The forest pressed in, suffocating, silent except for my own panicked breathing and the crunch of my boots on the leaves. I imagined it behind me, that black thing, moving effortlessly through the trees, closing the distance, waiting for me to tire, waiting to... What? I didn't even want to think about it. Finally, after what felt like hours, I started to hear other sounds, not just forest sounds. Faintly, in the distance, the murmur of cars, traffic, civilization. My heart leaped. I pushed myself harder, adrenaline surging again. Almost there, almost out of the woods, and then I saw it. Through the trees, a break in the darkness, a glimpse of sunlight, brighter, lower, the edge of the woods, the parking lot. Salvation. I burst out of the trees, stumbling into the open. The parking lot, almost empty now, just a couple of cars left. Thank God. I could see my car over by the edge of the lot, bathed in the last rays of the setting sun. I didn't stop running until I reached my car, fumbled with my keys, hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key into the lock, got the door open, threw myself inside, slammed it shut, locked it. Click, 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 locking every door, feeling momentarily safer, encased in metal and glass. Then I just sat there, behind the wheel, engine off, staring out at the woods I'd just escaped from. My breath was still ragged, my body trembling. My mind was racing, trying to process what had just happened, what I had seen, what I had felt. The parking lot was silent except for the cooling ticks of my car engine. The woods stood still, dark and impenetrable. No sound, no movement, just silence. But even there, in the relative safety of my car, I could still feel it, that lingering feeling of being watched, as if whatever was out there was still watching, from the edge of the trees, waiting. I finally started the engine, put the car in drive, and slowly, cautiously pulled out of the parking lot, kept glancing back at the woods in my rearview mirror as I drove away, watching for any movement, anything at all. Nothing, just the trees, darker now, fading into twilight. But even as I drove further and further away, down the winding mountain road, I couldn't shake the feeling, the fear, The chilling certainty that I had seen something real, something unknown, out there in the woods, watching, and I have no idea what it was. To this day I replay it in my head, those few seconds, that flicker of black fur, that feeling of absolute dread. And I still get chills. I haven't been back to Hemlock Ridge since, and I don't know if I ever will. Story 8. Okay, so I don't really know where else to talk about this. It happened last year, and I've told a few people, but they just kind of, well, you know how people are. They smile and nod, or they joke about it, but nobody really gets it. I found this place online and figured maybe someone here would understand. Maybe someone's been through something similar. It was duck season, late in the season, and the air had that bite to it. Even though it was still Louisiana and the humidity hangs thick year-round. Cypress Creek, that's where we always go, just outside of town. Serpent Bayou, specifically. It's pretty much swamp out there, lowlands that flood easy. Good for ducks, usually. That morning was cold, really cold for down here. Wind whipping off the water, cutting right through my jacket, even with layers underneath. Sun was barely peeking over the horizon. Everything still that grayish pre-dawn color. I wanted to get out early, try and catch the morning flight. Dad had work, so I was out there solo, which isn't unusual. I'm comfortable out in the woods, been hunting with him since I was little. I pushed my little four-wheeler as far as I could down the muddy track, then walked the rest of the way to the spot I had in mind. It's this flooded field, basically, opens up from the bayou. Normally you'd set up in some reeds or build a blind, but this year the water was higher, everything was flooded further back than usual. The only real cover was this big old cypress tree that had fallen over, half in the water, branches sticking up everywhere. Figured it was better than nothing. I waded out there, the water was icy, even through my waders I could feel it numbing my feet. Got myself tucked into the branches of that cypress, tried to make myself comfortable on a log, half submerged in the water. It wasn't exactly cozy, the wind was still getting through, but it was out of the direct open, at least. I loaded my shotgun, chambered a shell, and just settled in to wait. Dead quiet out there except for the wind whistling through the cypress trees and the water lapping around. Waited. 20, maybe 30 minutes went by. Nothing. Not even a whisper of wings overhead. Starting to think it was going to be a bust of a morning. That's when I heard it, rustling, behind me, deeper in the woods, on the bank of the bayou itself. I figured it was another hunter. Sometimes you run into guys out here, not often. But it happens. Didn't think much of it at first. Just figured someone else was moving into the area. So I stayed still, didn't want to spook anything. But the rustling kept coming, and it wasn't just rustling. It was heavy, like really heavy, and deliberate. Not like a deer moving through the undergrowth. This was different. Too slow, too forceful. Branches snapping, not just leaves crunching. The sound was moving closer, directly behind my little blind in the fallen tree. My heart started to pick up. I started thinking, okay, maybe it's a deer, but a really big buck. Still, it sounded wrong. Too heavy, too slow, and too loud for a deer. Then I heard the water moving. Slightly at first, then a definite splash. Something was coming down to the water's edge, right behind me. I was facing out towards the flooded field, expecting ducks to come from that direction, totally exposed from the back. Stupid me. Should have thought about my setup more. The rustling stopped completely. Silence, except for the wind, and my own damn heart pounding in my ears. I could feel my palms getting sweaty even in the cold, my breath caught in my throat. Then it happened. Something moved at the edge of the water, right at the tree line, just to my left, behind me. I dared to just barely turn my head, slow, so slow, like everything was in slow motion, peeking through the branches of the cypress. And I saw it. It was a shape, massive, dark, standing there at the edge of the bayou. Just standing. The light was still dim, early morning light, everything kind of shadowy, but I could make it out. Tall, taller than anything I'd ever seen in the woods. Thicker, too. Bulkier than any man, any deer, anything. And it was hairy, covered in fur. Dark fur, but with a kind of reddish-brown tinge in the dim light. Just solid fur. From head to, well, I couldn't see its feet. They were in the water or mud. I froze, completely, utterly frozen. My breath hitched in my throat again, and this time it wouldn't come out. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't even blink, I don't think. Just stared at this thing. It wasn't a bear. I've seen bears before. Black bears down south. This was different. Bigger. Way bigger. And the shape was more human somehow. Upright, but not human. Definitely not human. It was a Bigfoot. I swear to God that's what it was. Bigfoot. Like in those cheesy TV shows, the ones my dad used to laugh at. But this was real. This was standing right there. 30 feet away, maybe less. It just stood there for a second, maybe two, and then it moved. It squatted down, slowly, deliberately, like it knew exactly what it was doing. And it started to drink, right there at the edge of the bayou. Drinking, like a person would drink. Except it wasn't using its hands, or a cup or anything. It just lowered its head and started lapping up the water with its mouth. Loud slurping noises in the silence of the swamp. Deep, wet slurps. I could see it clearer now. As it squatted, its back came into better view through the branches. It was massive. Broad shoulders, thick neck, everything covered in that dark, reddish-brown fur. The smell. I don't know how to describe it. It wasn't a bad smell exactly, not like rot or anything, but it was musky, animalistic, wild, and strong. Even from that distance I could smell it, faintly, on the wind. Time just stopped. Everything stopped. The wind still blew, but it felt muted, like it was happening somewhere else. The water lapped, but it sounded distant. All I could hear, all I could see, all I could feel was this being drinking in front of me. It drank for what felt like forever. Minutes, probably. Each slurp echoing in my ears. I was completely paralyzed. Fear. Pure, raw, animal fear. Like every instinct in my body was screaming at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. My muscles were locked solid. I was petrified, just watching, helpless. I kept expecting it to notice me, to turn around, to look at me, to, I don't know, attack? Something. But it didn't. It just kept drinking, oblivious. Or maybe it knew I was there and just didn't care. That thought was even worse. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. It lifted its head slowly, water dripping from its muzzle, face. I couldn't really see its face clearly, not from the side, not in the dim light. But I could see the shape of its head, vaguely human-like, but bigger, more primitive. It stood up. Again, slow, deliberate movements, towering. It seemed even bigger, standing up, blocking out the trees behind it. Just enormous and silent, except for its breathing, which I could hear now, deep, raspy breaths. It turned. Not towards me, thankfully, but to its right along the water's edge, and it started to walk, lumber. Heavy, deliberate steps, splashing slightly in the shallow water, moving away from me. Along the edge of the bayou, deeper into the cypress woods. I watched it go, every muscle in my body screaming to move, to run, to get the hell out of there. But I was still frozen, watching it move away further and further until it disappeared, vanished, into the dense trees, swallowed by the shadows and the cypress trunks, just gone. And then silence, real silence. Just the wind and the water again, but different. Heavy silence, charged silence. The silence after something huge and terrifying has just happened. It took me a minute, maybe more, to even start breathing normally again. Slowly, gasping breaths at first, then deeper, trying to calm down. trying to get my heart to stop pounding like it was going to explode. And then, movement. I started to move, fingers first, then my hands. Then I could wiggle my toes inside my waders. Slowly, painstakingly, like I was waking up from a nightmare. I scrambled. Clumsily, splashing in the icy water, I climbed out of the branches of that cypress. Tripped, almost fell. Got back up. Fumbled for my shotgun, still loaded. Didn't even unload it. Didn't care. Just wanted to get out of there. Ran. Waded. Stumbled. Ran back through the flooded field, towards the path where I'd left the four-wheeler. Didn't look back. Didn't stop. Just ran. My lungs burning, legs aching, heart still hammering. Ran until I reached the four-wheeler. Fumbled with the keys, hands shaking so bad I could barely get them in the ignition. Finally, engine sputtered to life. I jammed it into gear and tore out of there, back down the muddy track, bouncing and sliding, branches whipping past my face, not even caring. Just wanted to be home, safe, away from that place. Got home, parked the four-wheeler in the yard, ran inside. Dad was in the kitchen making coffee, looked up when I slammed the door. "Everything all right?" he asked, surprised. "Thought you'd be out hunting for hours yet." I just stood there, panting, trying to get the words out. "Dad, you won't believe," I started to tell him, about the woods, the rustling, the sound, the thing, the Bigfoot, everything. It came out in a rush, words tumbling over each other, voice shaking. I'm sure I sounded crazy. He listened quietly, sipping his coffee, looking at me with that skeptical dad look. When I finished, out of breath, still shaking, he just said, "Bigfoot, huh? Out by Serpent Bayou?" I nodded. "Yeah. Dad, I swear, it was huge, hairy, drinking from the water right there. I saw it." He put down his coffee cup. "Daniel," he said, "you probably just saw a big deer, maybe a bear. It's early, still dark. Things look different in the woods." "No, Dad, it wasn't a deer, not a bear. It was like a man, but bigger, covered in fur. I know what I saw." My voice was getting louder, desperate to make him believe me. He sighed. All right, calm down. Let's have some breakfast, okay?" "But Dad, we'll talk about it later," he said, cutting me off. "Eat something. You look like you've seen a ghost." I didn't want breakfast. I wanted him to believe me. I wanted him to understand what I'd seen, what I'd been through, but he was being Dad, dismissive, skeptical. Later, after he finished his coffee and was getting ready for work, I was still sitting at the kitchen table, staring out the window. Quiet, still shaken. He came over, put his hand on my shoulder. "Look," he said, softer this time. "I know you think you saw something, and I know you're scared, but Bigfoot, come on, son, those are just stories." "But Dad," he sighed again. All right. Tell you what, I'm not working late today. After I get off, we'll go back out there. Take a look, just to put your mind at ease. How's that sound?" It wasn't exactly what I wanted, but it was better than nothing. At least he was acknowledging it a little bit. "Okay," I said quietly. The whole day dragged. I couldn't think about anything else, kept replaying the scene in my head over and over, the dark shape at the water's edge, the slurping sounds, the smell, the fear. It was still there, clinging to me. Finally, afternoon came. Dad got home from work. "Ready?" he asked, grabbing his jacket. I just nodded, already dressed, waiting. We drove back out to Cypress Creek. This time we took the truck, not the four-wheeler. Walked in together, along the muddy track. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the swamp. The air was still cold, but not as biting as morning. We got to the flooded field. I pointed towards the fallen cypress. "Over there," I said, voice still a little shaky. "That's where I was." And it was over there, by the bayou bank, behind me. We walked over to the water's edge. Dad was looking around, kind of amused, still skeptical, I could tell. "Okay," he said, "show me where you saw this." Bigfoot. I pointed to a spot in the soft mud right at the water's edge. Right there, I said. It was squatting right there, drinking. And then I saw it. In the mud. Clear as day. Footprints. But not just any footprints. Giant footprints. Bigger than any human foot. Bigger than any bear paw I'd ever seen. Long, wide, with toes. I don't even know. Just huge, deep impressions in the mud, leading down to the water and back up and vanishing into the woods. Dad stopped. He'd been about to say something sarcastic. I could see it on his face. But he stopped, looked down at the footprints, and he went quiet. Really quiet. He walked over to the tracks, crouched down, looked at them closely, ran his hand along the edge of one, stood up, looked at me. His face. It wasn't skeptical anymore. It was different, serious, almost pale. "Daniel," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. What are these?" I just shrugged, still staring at the tracks. "Bigfoot tracks," I said quietly. "I told you." He didn't say anything for a long time, just stood there looking at the tracks, then looking out into the woods, then back at the tracks again. He walked around, tracing the path of the footprints, following them for a few feet into the mud. More tracks, everywhere. Finally he spoke. I don't understand this," he said, shaking his head slowly. These aren't bear tracks. Not deer. Not anything I've ever seen." He looked at me again, really looked at me, like he was seeing me for the first time, and maybe believing me for the first time. "You really saw something out here this morning, didn't you?" he asked. I nodded, just once. Couldn't speak, didn't need to. The tracks were there, proof, undeniable proof. He was silent again for a long time. Then he just said, Let's go home, son." We turned around and walked back to the truck. Neither of us said a word the whole way back. The sun set, the sky turned dark. The swamp got darker, quieter, more mysterious. We drove home in silence. Inside the house, things felt different. The air felt charged, heavier, like something had shifted, something had changed. That night, neither of us slept much. I know I didn't. Just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene again and again, and thinking about the footprints, the giant footprints in the mud. Dad didn't talk about it much after that. Not really. He never joked about Bigfoot again, that's for sure. Sometimes he'd just look at me, a strange look in his eyes, like he was seeing something I couldn't see, or like he was remembering something he didn't want to remember. We still go hunting out at Cypress Creek, but not Serpent Bayou, not anymore. We find other spots, further away from the bayou, and I'm always looking over my shoulder now, always listening. Every rustle in the leaves, every snap of a branch, every splash in the water. It makes my heart jump. I don't know what it was I saw that morning. I don't know what those footprints were. I just know. I know what I experienced. And I know those tracks were real. And sometimes, when I'm out in the woods, I still get that feeling, that cold, creeping fear, that feeling that I'm being watched, that something big and hairy and unknown is still out there, hidden in the shadows, watching, waiting, and I can't explain it. I still can't explain it, and I don't think I ever will. It just happened, and that's it. That's all I know. Story 9. Listen, I'm not one for sharing stuff like this. Kept it bottled up for years, decades even, but lately it's been getting to me again. Been seeing things online, reading stuff. Makes you wonder if you're the only one, you know? I grew up in Emerald County, East Texas. Piney woods, deep woods. My family, we've been woods people forever. My great-great-grandpa, they say he wrestled black bears. I don't know about that, but we hunted, we fished, we lived off the land. My dad was a hunting guide, and I basically grew up in his shadow, tagging along, learning everything he knew, and then some. I started guiding myself when I was just barely old enough, and I thought I knew those woods like the back of my hand. I mean, really knew them. Every deer trail, every creek bend, every rustle in the leaves. I could tell you what animal made it before I even saw it. First time I ever felt like I didn't know anything was when I was maybe 5. Dad took me out for deer season near the Sabine River bottom, around Panola. Used to be a town there, but it's gone now, swallowed back by the trees, real deep in there. He set me up on a little stump near a clearing, told me to be quiet, watch for deer, but mostly just to be still and let him do the hunting. 5-year-old me, I was pretty good at being still. Too still sometimes, looking back. It was getting close to dusk that time when the woods get all hushed up. You know what I mean? Not silent exactly, but like everything is holding its breath. Sun was going down, painting everything orange, and long shadows were stretching out like fingers from the trees. I was getting a little bored, I'll admit, fidgeting with a stick, looking around. And then I saw it. Over by the tree line, kind of weaving between the pines. Dark shape, too dark, almost blacker than the shadows. It was moving and moving fast, but wrong. Kind of limping, but still covering ground like nothing I'd ever seen. It was upright, like a person, but not a person. Too tall, too off. And it looked covered in something dark and shaggy like fur, but thicker, coarser. It was hard to see details in the fading light and between the trees, but I remember that impression, that feeling. Wrong, just utterly wrong. I remember my breath catching in my throat. I wanted to call for my dad, but my voice just wouldn't come out. I just stared, frozen, watching this thing move through the trees. It disappeared into the thicker woods, gone as quickly as it came. Then everything was just woods and shadows again. I told my dad later, of course. He was busy field dressing a buck he'd gotten and barely looked up. "Probably just a big old boar, son," he said, wiping blood on his pants. "Or maybe you saw a deer running funny." He chuckled and ruffled my hair. "Your imagination's running wild, kid." And that was that. Childish fancy, right? Forgot about it mostly after a while. But that image, that feeling, it stuck in the back of my head, like a burr. Grew up, got older, spent more and more time in the woods. Started noticing things, little things, subtle things, whistles sometimes, not bird whistles, lower, longer, almost like someone trying to whistle through their teeth. And pine cones, sometimes they'd just fall. Land near me, even if there wasn't any wind. Look up, nothing there, just quiet trees, and once or twice, late in the evening, a sound. Not an animal call I recognized. Deeper, raspier, more unsettling. Kind of like a growl, but not quite. Like someone clearing their throat real deep down, but drawn out and angry. Dismiss them all, of course. The wind, squirrels, who knows? Woods are full of sounds. I was a rational guy, a woodsman. Didn't believe in ghosts or monsters or any of that nonsense. Still, these things, they were there. Little pinpricks of unease, adding up over time. Then came Silent Creek. When I was 17, hunting deer again, only this time by myself. Dad figured I was old enough to go it alone, prove myself. Silent Creek is way back in the woods, even deeper than Panola. Remote, beautiful, in a wild, untamed kind of way. Tall pines, thick underbrush, the creek running dark and slow through it all. Found a good spot, a tree stand overlooking a decent-sized clearing. Sun setting again, same time of day as when I saw that thing, back at Panola. That memory, just a flicker in my mind. Settled in, rifle across my lap, waiting. The woods went quiet again, like they always do at twilight. But this time, it was different. Quieter. Too quiet. Not just the animals hushed, but everything. No breeze rustling the needles, no crickets chirping, no squirrels chattering. Just still. Like the woods were holding its breath again, only this time it felt heavy, ominous. I started to get that prickly feeling on the back of my neck. You know it? Like you're being watched, even when you can't see anything. I scanned the woods around the clearing, slowly, deliberately. Nothing. Just trees and shadows, getting deeper with every minute. I tried to tell myself it was just nerves, being out there alone in the deep woods at dusk. But it didn't feel like nerves. It felt different, wrong. That word again. And then it started. At first, just a slight tremor in the ground. Felt it through the tree stand, a vibration under my feet, like something big was moving far off. I strained my ears, listened for branches snapping, leaves rustling. Nothing. Just the unnerving quiet. The tremor got stronger, more insistent. And then I saw it. A sweet gum tree, just outside the clearing, maybe 30 yards from my stand. Not a sapling, mind you. This was a grown tree, thick trunk, tall, and it was shaking violently, like something was grabbing it, wrenching it back and forth, branches whipping around, leaves fluttering, the whole tree shuddering like it was about to be ripped out of the ground. But there was no wind, not even a breath of air. The other trees were still, silent sentinels all around it. Just this one tree, convulsing like it was having a fit. And the ground was vibrating even harder now, resonating up through the stand, through my bones. My heart started hammering in my chest, a heavy, panicked drumbeat. What in God's name? I gripped my rifle tighter, my knuckles white. Whatever was doing that to that tree was huge, incredibly huge. I tried to see what was shaking it, peered through the twilight and the branches. Shadows. Too many shadows. But nothing solid, nothing I could make out. Then the roar. It wasn't like anything I'd ever heard before or since. Not a bear, not a mountain lion, not a bobcat, not a wolf. I'd heard all of those in the woods, countless times. This was different, deeper, guttural, primal. It started low, rumbling in the earth, and built up, rising in pitch and volume, until it was this deafening, earth-shattering bellow that seemed to vibrate through the very air itself. It hit me in the chest, physically. I felt it resonate inside me, shake my lungs, make my teeth rattle. Terror. Pure, unadulterated, primal terror. I froze. Completely, utterly frozen. My breath hitched, my muscles locked, my mind went blank. Just the roar, and the shaking tree, and this wave of paralyzing fear washing over me, drowning me. It was like every survival instinct I had was screaming at me, telling me I was in danger, in unimaginable danger. But I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't even breathe right. The tree shook again, even more violently this time. Branches snapped, cracking like gunshots. Leaves rained down. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the roar cut off. Silence, except for the frantic pounding of my heart and the ringing in my ears and the sound of my own ragged breaths. Silence. But the tree was still shaking. And the ground was still vibrating, and I was still frozen solid in that tree stand, paralyzed by a fear so intense it was physical pain. I knew in that moment, with a certainty that went deeper than logic or reason, that whatever had made that sound was still out there, close, dangerously close, and I was trapped, exposed, helpless. Something snapped inside me then. The paralysis broke. Adrenaline flooded my veins. Instinct took over. I didn't think, didn't plan, didn't even aim, just reacted. I leaped out of the tree stand, landing hard on the ground, rifle clattering against the stand. I snatched it up, levered around into the chamber, and pointed it in the direction of the shaking tree, into the deepening shadows beyond. And I fired, pointed it up into the air, just a reflex, a desperate, futile act of... what? Defense? Warning? I don't know. Didn't even make sense. But I squeezed the trigger and the rifle roared, the sound echoing back through the suddenly still woods, a pathetic echo compared to what I'd just heard. And then I heard it. Crashing. Deep in the underbrush, beyond the sweet gum tree. Something big, moving fast, tearing through the woods, heading away from me, deeper into the trees, breaking branches, snapping saplings, a heavy, frantic retreat, running. Whatever it was running. From me, from the gunshot, from something. I didn't wait to find out. Didn't think. just turned and ran, stumbled, scrambled, tripped over roots and branches, adrenaline fueling me, terror driving me. I ran back the way I'd come, towards where I'd left my three-wheeler parked on the edge of the logging road. Felt like I was running for my life because, in that moment, I honestly thought I was. Got to the three-wheeler, fumbled with the key, engine sputtering to life. Didn't even bother with my gear, my stand, my backpack, anything. Just slammed it into gear and tore out of there, bouncing and crashing down the logging road, back towards the main road, back towards civilization. Didn't stop until I was miles away, heart still hammering, hands shaking so bad I could barely grip the handlebars. I didn't go back. Not ever. Not to Silent Creek. Sold my tree stand, all my hunting gear for that spot. Told my dad some story about getting spooked by a bear, something vague and easily dismissed. He nodded, didn't push. Maybe he knew more than he let on about the woods, about things that go bump in the night, even for seasoned woodsmen like us. For years, I tried to explain it away. Weather phenomena, strange animal sounds, tricks of the light and shadows, my imagination running wild again. But none of it fit. None of it explained the tree shaking with no wind, the roar that vibrated through my bones, the sheer paralyzing terror I felt. And that feeling, that sense of something else, something huge, something powerful, something utterly unknown and terrifying. I still hunt, still guide, still spend time in the woods, but never in those deep, remote places, never alone, especially not at dusk, and always, always with a deeper kind of awareness, a listening, a watching, a waiting, because now I know. I know there are things out there in the woods that we don't understand, things that are older and bigger and scarier than anything we can imagine, things that can shake trees and roar like the earth breaking open. And sometimes, in the quiet of the twilight woods, when the wind dies down and the animals go silent, I swear I can still hear it. That deep guttural roar echoing in the back of my mind, a chilling reminder of what's out there in the dark. And I know deep down that whatever it was, it saw me that night. And for reasons I'll never understand, it let me live. And that's the part that really gets to you, isn't it? Not just the fear, but the not knowing, the unexplained, the things that slip through the cracks of our understanding, leaving us shaken and wondering, what was that and what if it comes back? Story 10. We thought it would be a nice day trip, you know. Get out of the house, breathe some fresh air, see a bit of Ohio that wasn't just highway and strip malls. Salt Fork Lake State Park was supposed to be beautiful, especially in the fall when the leaves are turning. My wife Sarah, she's always loved being outdoors, me too, so it seemed perfect. We packed a lunch, grabbed our hiking boots, and drove out to Meadowbrook. It was definitely pretty. The drive there, once you got off the main roads, was all winding country lanes with farms and woods on either side. The air was crisp, the kind that smells like wood smoke and damp leaves. We found the park entrance easily enough and followed the signs for hiking trails. We picked one that sounded interesting. The map said it went through some woods and circled back around a part of the lake. The start of the trail was easy, wide and pretty flat. Lots of other people around at first. Families, couples, folks walking their dogs. The sun was shining, birds were chirping. Normal, you know, peaceful. Then, maybe about an hour or so in, the trail started to get narrower, and we didn't see anyone else anymore. It was deeper into the woods then, and the trees got taller, thicker. Still beautiful, don't get me wrong. Sunlight filtering through the leaves, patches of moss on the ground, that earthy smell that comes from the forest floor. We were talking, pointing out mushrooms, just enjoying being there when we saw it. It was off the main trail, just a little path leading off to the right. Kind of overgrown, like it hadn't been used much lately. There was a small wooden sign, almost hidden by vines, that we could barely read. It looked like it said, "Old Cemetery" or something like that. Sarah was curious. She's always been drawn to old things, history and all that. I wasn't thrilled about wandering off the marked trail, but she really wanted to check it out. So we pushed our way through some bushes, and there it was. tucked away in the trees, this tiny old cemetery. You wouldn't even know it was there unless you were looking for it, or just happened to stumble upon it like we did. It was quiet. I mean, woods are usually quiet, but this was different. It wasn't just the normal quiet of being away from cars and noise. It was dead silent, like someone had hit the mute button on the world. The birds that had been singing on the trail, gone quiet. No squirrels chattering, no rustling in the undergrowth. Absolutely nothing. We stepped inside the little cemetery, and it was like stepping into a bubble of silence. The air even felt different, stiller, heavier somehow. It was maybe the size of a small backyard, surrounded by a crumbling stone wall that was mostly hidden by ivy and weeds. Headstones everywhere, old, weathered, some broken and leaning over. Moss covered everything, the stones, the ground, the wall. It was like nature was trying to reclaim the whole place. We started walking around, reading the names and dates on the headstones. They were really old, some from the early 1800s. You could barely make out some of the inscriptions. Sarah was getting really into it, trying to decipher the names and stories, wondering about the people buried there. I was trying to be interested too, but honestly, that silence was starting to creep me out. It wasn't just that there were no sounds, it was the absence of sound. You expect to hear something in the woods, even if it's just the wind in the trees. But there was nothing, not even the wind. The leaves on the trees weren't moving. It was like the whole forest had just stopped breathing. We spent maybe half an hour there, wandering around the cemetery, reading headstones, Sarah taking pictures. The silence just hung there, thick and heavy. I kept looking around, half expecting to see something, I don't know what. Just something that would explain the weirdness. But there was nothing. Just trees, stones, and silence. Finally, I said to Sarah, "Okay, honey, I think we should probably get going. This place is kind of getting to me." She agreed reluctantly. She said she felt it too, that heavy stillness. We walked back to the little path that led to the cemetery and back onto the main trail. As soon as we stepped back onto the marked trail, it was like someone turned the volume back on, just a tiny bit. We could hear a few faint bird sounds again, the rustle of leaves in the breeze. It was slight, but it was there. It was like we'd come out of that silent bubble. It was still quieter than it had been when we started our hike, but it wasn't that oppressive, absolute silence of the cemetery anymore. We walked on, heading back towards where we thought the parking lot was. We were getting closer to the paved road that ran through the park. I figured I'd go get the car and meet Sarah at the trailhead, save her the extra walk in her hiking boots. So, I told her, "Why don't you wait here by this big oak tree? I'll go get the car and pull it around to the parking lot. Then I can just drive back here and pick you up." She said, "Okay." I gave her a quick kiss and started walking towards the parking area. It was maybe a 10-minute walk, all downhill, mostly on the paved road now, which ran alongside a wooded bank. The trees went right up to the edge of the road, and the ground was covered in fallen leaves. It was fall, after all. As I was walking, thinking about how weird that cemetery was, I heard it. Footsteps, coming from the woods on the bank above the road to my right. Distinct footsteps, walking through dry leaves. Crunch, crunch, crunch. I stopped. I listened. The footsteps stopped too. It wasn't squirrels or deer. This was the sound of someone walking, deliberately stepping through the fallen leaves. Heavy steps. Human-sounding steps, but there was no one there. The woods on the bank were dense, thick with trees and undergrowth. You couldn't see into them very far at all. And there wasn't a trail up there, at least not that I could see from the road. I told myself it was probably just some hikers who had gone off trail, maybe making their own way through the woods. But the silence from the cemetery was still fresh in my mind, that heavy, unnatural stillness. And the feeling of being watched that I'd felt in the cemetery, it was starting to come back. I started walking again, trying to ignore it, to just focus on getting to the parking lot. And then I heard it again. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The footsteps, keeping pace with me. Still in the woods above the road to my right. I stopped again, quicker this time. And the footsteps stopped instantly, like they were waiting for me to move. My heart started to beat a little faster. Okay, this was getting weird. I looked up into the woods, trying to see if I could spot anything, any movement, anything at all. But there was just the dense trees, the fallen leaves, the shadows, nothing. I started walking again, a little faster now, and the footsteps started again, keeping pace, still mirroring my movements exactly. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Stop, they stop. Start, they start. It was like whatever was making the sound was deliberately following me and wanted me to know it. My skin started to prickle. That feeling of unease from the cemetery was turning into something else now. Something colder, sharper, fear, a real creeping fear. I started to walk even faster, almost a jog, and the footsteps sped up too, keeping right with me. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Louder now, more insistent. They weren't running, but they were definitely matching my pace, whatever pace I set. I didn't dare look up at the woods again. I just kept my eyes fixed on the road ahead, trying to get to the parking lot as quickly as possible. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears, and the hairs on the back of my neck were standing up. This was no hiker, no animal. This was something else. I was practically running now. The parking lot was just ahead. I could see the cars, finally. And the footsteps were still there, still keeping pace. Crunch, 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 like whatever it was running right alongside me in the woods, invisible but close, so close. I burst out of the trees and into the parking lot, finally out in the open. I spun around, looking back at the woods, expecting, I don't know what I was expecting, to see someone standing there, or some thing. But there was nothing, just the trees, the woods, silent again now. The footsteps had stopped the instant I reached the open parking lot. I stood there for a moment, panting, trying to catch my breath, heart still hammering. I felt ridiculous, standing there in the parking lot, scared by footsteps in the leaves. It sounded stupid even to myself, but it hadn't felt stupid. It had felt malevolent, like something was deliberately messing with me, something unseen, something that knew I was there and was watching me. I shook my head, trying to dismiss it as just nerves, maybe too much coffee that morning, something like that. I got into the car, started it up, and drove back to where I'd left Sarah. She was still standing by the oak tree, waiting. When I pulled up, she got in the car, looking a little pale. "You okay?" I asked her. She nodded slowly. "Yeah, just, it got really quiet here too, after you left." "Quiet?" I said. "It was quiet back at the cemetery, right?" She looked at me, her eyes wide. "No," she said softly, "not like that silence at the cemetery. This was different. It was like everything just faded out." "What do you mean?" She took a breath. "Well, first the birds stopped again, like they did in the cemetery. Then even the wind seemed to stop. And then I started hearing things in the bushes." "What kind of things?" I asked, my voice suddenly feeling tight in my throat. "Rustling," she said, "like something moving around in there, like it was getting closer. I couldn't see anything, just the bushes shaking a little bit every now and then, and twigs snapping, like something was circling around but just out of sight." My blood ran cold. "You heard something too?" She nodded again, her eyes still wide and a little scared. "Yeah, it was unsettling, like something was watching me, waiting." We just sat there for a moment in the car, the silence inside the car thick and uncomfortable. I didn't tell her about the footsteps in the woods above the road. I didn't want to scare her more. I started the car and pulled out of the parking area. We drove home mostly in silence, both of us staring out the windows, lost in our own thoughts. The beautiful scenery of Salt Fork Lake seemed tainted now. That peaceful woods, it didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt watched. We never talked about it much after that. Not really. We'd mention it sometimes in passing, a quick, uneasy word. But we never really delved into it. It was like we both knew something strange had happened out there that day, something we couldn't explain, something that didn't fit into the normal world. And maybe we were both a little afraid to talk about it too much, afraid of what we might find if we really started to think about it, to try and understand what it was. To this day, I don't know what it was. Footsteps in the leaves that mirrored my own, in woods so quiet they felt dead, rustling bushes and snapping twigs circling around my wife while she stood alone by a tree. The absolute silence in that cemetery. It was all connected somehow. I know it was, but what it was, I haven't got a clue, and honestly, sometimes I really don't want to know. Story 11. Salt Fork is beautiful, especially at sunset. The lake stretches out, surrounded by these rolling hills and woods, mostly undeveloped around the edges. By the time we found our spot, the sun was already dipping low, painting the sky in those fiery orange and purple colors. We chose a spot near this long, shadowy ridge that ran along the shoreline. It wasn't exactly close, maybe 50 yards away, but it felt secluded. The water was still, reflecting the fading light like glass, and everything was just peaceful. That's the word. Peaceful. You could feel it in the air. We got the boat anchored properly, made sure everything was secure for the night. The pontoon had a little propane grill, so we decided to cook burgers on deck. It was getting dark pretty quickly, and the stars were starting to pop out. No light pollution out there, just pure inky black sky sprinkled with what felt like a million stars. We put on some soft music, nothing loud, just background stuff to chill to. Sarah was prepping the burgers, chopping up some tomatoes and lettuce, and I was getting the grill going. We were both just relaxed, chatting about nothing much, enjoying the quiet. Then it happened. It was so sudden, so completely out of nowhere, that for a split second, I honestly thought something had gone wrong with the boat itself. A massive, violent splash, like something huge, unbelievably heavy, had just been dropped into the water right beside us. It wasn't just a splash, it was like an explosion of water, throwing spray up and over the side of the pontoon. We both froze, mid-motion. Sarah jumped back from the cutting board, dropping her knife onto the deck with a clatter. My heart leapt into my throat. "What the hell was that?" she whispered, her eyes wide. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it. Did something fall off the ridge? Was it an animal? But the sound, the sheer force of it, it felt way too big for an animal, even a deer, falling from that height. And falling where? It wasn't like it landed on the boat. It was in the water, close, but just off to the side, near the back of the pontoon. I went to the edge of the deck and peered into the darkness. The water was still rippling from the impact, the waves spreading out in widening circles. I couldn't see anything floating, no debris, no sign of what had caused it. Just black water reflecting the starlight. The night sounds, crickets chirping, the gentle lapping of water against the boat, seemed to have stopped for a second after the splash, then slowly, tentatively, started up again. I grabbed the flashlight we had on board, a big mag light, and pointed it towards the ridge. It was just a solid wall of darkness, trees and bushes silhouetted against the night sky. Nothing moving, completely silent from over there now, except for the normal night noises. "Hello?" I called out, my voice a bit louder than I intended, echoing across the still water. "Is anyone there?" Silence. Only the faint echo of my own voice coming back from the ridge. "Hello?" I tried again, louder this time, aiming the flashlight beam up towards the trees. I swept the light back and forth across the slope, trying to penetrate the darkness. Nothing. Just trees, rocks, shadows. No movement, no glint of eyes, No sound except the crickets and the distant hoot of an owl somewhere deeper in the woods. Sarah came and stood beside me, her hand gripping my arm tight. I could feel her trembling slightly. "What was it, Jacob? What do you think it was?" I don't know," I admitted, honestly puzzled. "Maybe a branch fell? A really big branch? But that didn't feel right. Branches falling usually don't make that kind of splash. And the force, it just didn't seem like a natural fall." We stood there for a few minutes, flashlight beams still pointed at the ridge, just staring and listening. Nothing. Utter silence from the shore. The feeling of peace we'd had earlier was completely gone, replaced by a prickle of unease, a weird sense of being watched. It was like the sudden splash had ripped through the quiet, exposing something underneath that we weren't supposed to see or hear. Maybe it was just an animal," Sarah said, trying to sound reassuring, but her voice still trembled slightly. "A beaver? Or something bigger? Maybe it slipped and fell into the water?" "Maybe," I said, though I didn't believe it. "Beavers are big, but they don't cause explosions in the water. And what kind of something bigger would be on that ridge, slipping into the lake with that kind of force and then just disappear? It just didn't add up." Should we move?" Sarah asked, looking around at the dark shoreline. "Go somewhere else on the lake?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to crank up the engine and get the hell out of there, find a spot in the middle of the lake, as far from the shore as possible. But another part of me, maybe just stubborn curiosity, made me want to stay and figure out what had happened. And besides, where would we go? It was pitch black out there. Moving around on the lake at night in the dark seemed like it could be even riskier than staying put. "Let's just be careful," I said, trying to sound calm and in control, even though inside my nerves were frayed. "Let's finish making dinner, but keep an eye out and listen." We went back to the grill, but the atmosphere had completely changed. The easygoing mood was gone, replaced by a tense, watchful silence. We moved more slowly, more deliberately. Every little noise, a rustle in the bushes along the shoreline, a fish jumping in the water, made us jump. The burgers, when they were finally cooked, didn't taste good anymore. My appetite was completely gone, replaced by a knot of anxiety in my stomach. We ate in silence, both of us constantly scanning the ridge, listening for any sound out of the ordinary. The flashlight stayed on, pointed towards the shore. Every shadow seemed to move. Every rustle of leaves sounded like footsteps. I kept expecting to see something, a light, a figure moving in the trees, anything to explain what had happened, or at least confirm we weren't alone out there. But there was nothing, just the darkness, the shadows, and the oppressive silence from the ridge. The silence was almost worse than a noise. It felt heavy, like it was pressing down on us, making it hard to breathe. After we finished eating, or rather picked at our food, we cleaned up the deck as quickly as we could. We put away all the cooking stuff, stowed everything securely inside the cabin. We normally like to sit out on deck after dinner, watch the stars, maybe have a drink. But tonight, the thought of staying out in the open felt exposed, vulnerable. We went inside the cabin, locking the doors, even though it felt a bit ridiculous on a boat in the middle of a lake. The cabin wasn't much, a small space with a couple of bunks and a tiny table. But inside, with the doors locked, it felt a little safer, a little more protected. We closed the curtains on the windows, shutting out the view of the dark lake and the ominous ridge. We sat there in the dim light of the cabin, listening. Every creak of the boat, every ripple of water against the hull, made us jump. The silence from the ridge felt even heavier now, pressing in on us from all sides. "Maybe we should call someone," Sarah whispered, after about an hour of strained silence. "Park rangers, or, I don't know, someone?" "Who would we call?" I said, feeling helpless. "And what would we tell them?" "Hey, someone threw a rock in the lake near our boat and it scared us. They'd think we were crazy." She was right. It sounded absurd. But the fear, it was real. It wasn't just about the rock itself. It was about the feeling of being watched, of something unseen out there in the darkness that had deliberately disturbed our peace, just to... what? To scare us? To let us know it was there? "Maybe it was just kids," I said, trying to come up with a rational explanation, anything to ease the tension. "Kids messing around on the shore, throwing rocks in the water. Didn't see us out here in the dark." Kids? At almost 10 at night? Out in the woods by themselves? And throwing rocks that big? Sarah sounded unconvinced, and frankly, so was I. The splash had been too loud, too forceful for just some kids messing around. This wasn't just a pebble. This felt like a serious rock, a deliberately thrown rock. We stayed up for hours that night, both of us wide awake, listening, straining our ears for any sound from outside. The silence was broken only by the natural sounds of the night, the crickets, the owls, the occasional splash of a fish. But underlying it all was this heavy, oppressive silence from the ridge. It felt like something was out there, still watching, still waiting. Sleep was impossible. Every time I started to drift off, I'd jerk awake, convinced I'd heard something different, something besides the normal night sounds. Sarah was the same. We just sat there, in the dark cabin, two tense, exhausted figures, waiting for something. We didn't even know what. As the night wore on, the fear didn't lessen. It shifted. It went from being a sudden, sharp fear at the splash to a slow, creeping dread. The unknown was the worst part. Not knowing what had thrown the rock or why. Not knowing if it was still out there watching us or if it was gone. And if it was gone, where had it gone? Eventually, the first hint of dawn started to lighten the sky, a faint grey glow on the horizon, barely visible through the curtains. With the coming of the light, a tiny sliver of relief started to creep in. Darkness was the enemy, and the light felt like it offered some kind of protection. False or not, it was something. We cautiously opened the curtains and peered out. The lake was still, shrouded in a light mist. The ridge, now visible in the dim morning light, looked ordinary. Just trees, rocks, bushes. Normal, harmless. But it wasn't. We knew it wasn't. The memory of that sudden, violent splash, the feeling of being watched, was still too fresh, too real. As the sun rose higher, burning off the mist and painting the lake in warm morning light, the tension slowly began to ease. The fear didn't vanish completely, but it receded, pushed back by the normalcy of daylight. We went out on deck, cautiously, still scanning the ridge, expecting something. But there was nothing. Just the peaceful morning lake, bathed in sunlight. We packed up, got the boat ready to leave. As I pulled up the anchor, I looked back at the ridge one last time. It looked so calm, so innocent in the morning light. Impossible to believe that just a few hours ago it had felt so menacing, so alive with unseen presence. We motored away from the cove, out into the open lake, leaving the shadowed ridge behind. As we got further away, the feeling of unease slowly started to dissipate, replaced by a shaky sense of relief. We talked about it, trying to make sense of it, but we couldn't. We went through all the logical explanations. Branches, animals, kids, but none of them felt right. None of them explained the sheer force of the splash, the feeling of intention behind it. We never figured it out. We never saw anything, heard anything else. It was just that one moment, that one violent splash, that shattered the peace of the night and left us with this lingering unease, this feeling that we had witnessed something we weren't supposed to, something we couldn't explain. And to this day, whenever I think about Salt Fork Lake, it's not the beautiful sunsets or the starlit sky I remember. It's that splash, That sudden, terrifying splash in the dark, and the silence that followed, heavy and watchful, from the shadows on the ridge. And I still have no idea what it was, or what it wanted. Story 12. We love camping. My wife Sarah and I, we try to get out as much as we can. We're not really into crowded campgrounds or anything like that. We prefer to find spots that are a little more off the beaten path, you know? Somewhere quiet where you can really feel like you're in nature. Salt Fork Lake is one of our favorite places because it's pretty big, and there are a lot of little coves and inlets where you can drop anchor and just feel totally isolated. We have a pontoon boat, nothing fancy, but it's perfect for spending nights out on the lake. We usually bring our dog, Buster, but this time he stayed home with Sarah's mum because we knew we were going to be doing a bit of hiking during the day, and it was supposed to be really hot. We picked this cove near Whispering Pines that we'd been to before. It's tucked way back, surrounded by trees, and usually it's super peaceful. We got there in the late afternoon. The sun was starting to dip a little, and the water was like glass. We set up the camper enclosure on the boat, grilled some burgers, and just relaxed watching the sunset. It was perfect. The kind of evening where you feel like you can just breathe, and all the stress from work and everything else just melts away. We stayed up for a while after dark, just talking and looking at the stars. It was a clear night, and the stars were incredible out there, so far from city lights. Eventually, we got tired and decided to turn in. Sarah fell asleep pretty quickly. She can sleep through anything, honestly. I'm usually a bit of a lighter sleeper, and it takes me a little longer to drift off. It was completely silent. That's what I noticed first. Not silent like peaceful silent, but silent like everything else had just stopped making noise. No crickets, no frogs, not even the gentle lapping of water against the boat, which you can usually always hear. Just nothing. And then I heard it. A low, deep hoot. At first, I thought it was just one owl, somewhere off in the distance. Owls are normal out in the woods, right? You expect to hear them, but then another one hooted, closer this time, and then another one and another. It wasn't just one or two, it was like they were all around us. And they weren't just regular owl hoots. These were different. They were louder, more insistent, and they had this weird rhythm to them. Who cooks for you, who cooks for you all? That's how they say barred owls sound. And yeah, that's pretty close, but it was more intense than that, more drawn out. And there were so many of them, it was like a chorus, but a really unsettling one. I nudged Sarah awake. "Hey," I whispered, "wake up for a sec. Listen to this." She groaned a little and rolled over, but she was awake enough to hear. She went quiet for a second, then she sat up a bit, listening. "What is that?" she mumbled, sounding kind of groggy. "Owls," I said, "but listen how many there are, and how loud they are." We both just sat there in the dark, inside the boat camper, listening to this insane owl concert that had suddenly erupted all around us. It was echoing across the water, bouncing off the trees. It felt like we were completely surrounded. And it just kept going, hoot after hoot, never stopping, never letting up. It was starting to get really unnerving. It wasn't just the volume or the number of owls. It was the feeling. It felt like they were communicating something, and whatever it wasn't good. Like they were warning us, or something else. I don't even know how to describe it. But it wasn't normal owl sounds. It felt purposeful, like they were doing it at us. After a few minutes of this, I was getting seriously creeped out. I mean, I've heard owls before. Living in the country, you hear them sometimes at night, no big deal. But this was different. This was overwhelming and just weirdly aggressive sounding. "Maybe we should check it out," I said to Sarah, even though part of me really didn't want to. Curiosity, I guess. Stupid curiosity sometimes gets you in trouble. Sarah looked at me, her eyes wide in the dim light coming through the camper windows. "Check what out? Just stay inside," she said, her voice a little shaky. She's not usually easily spooked, so that kind of got to me too. but I couldn't shake this feeling, this pull to see what was going on. Maybe if I just looked out, saw the owls, maybe it would make it less creepy, more normal. Like, okay, there's just a bunch of owls, they're being loud, whatever. It's nature. So I slowly unzipped the side of the camper enclosure, as quietly as I could. The sound of the zipper seemed ridiculously loud in the sudden heavy silence that had fallen. As soon as the zipper opened all the way, I peeked out, and the owl sound stopped, just like that, snapped off, gone. 1 second, this deafening chorus of hoots from every direction, and the next, nothing. Complete silence again, except this time it was even heavier, more oppressive than before. It was like the whole world had just held its breath. I strained my eyes, trying to see out into the darkness. It was a moonless night, so it was pitch black outside the small pool of light from the boat's interior lights filtering through the camper windows. I could make out the shapes of the trees on the shoreline, dark silhouettes against the slightly less dark sky, but that was about it. I couldn't see any owls. I couldn't hear anything. It was more unsettling than the owls had been. That sudden, absolute silence, after all that noise, it just felt wrong. Like everything had just stopped. Like time had stopped. I stood there for a few seconds, peering out, feeling this weird mix of relief that the owl noise had stopped and this growing sense of unease because of the sudden, unnatural silence. I couldn't explain it, but it felt like something had changed, like something had been alerted. "Anything," Sarah whispered from behind me. I shook my head, still looking out into the darkness. "Nothing. They just stopped. As soon as I opened the camper, it's completely silent now." "That's weirder," she said. And she was right. It was way weirder. I zipped the camper back up, feeling even more on edge than before. We lay back down in bed, both of us wide awake now, listening. But there was nothing to hear. Just the silence. It felt like it was pressing in on us. We must have eventually drifted off, exhaustion taking over. But it was a restless sleep. I kept waking up and checking, listening for anything. But the silence remained. Just that thick, heavy, unnatural silence. Then it happened again. Later. Much later, I think. Deep in the night. I was jolted awake, not by a sound this time, just jolted awake, like someone had poked me with a cattle prod. My heart was pounding, and I was instantly wide awake, alert, terrified, even though I didn't know why. And then I heard it. A sound coming from outside, from the shore, from the direction of the trees. It was a sound of something moving, running, through the water, shallow water, because I could hear the splashing, the sucking sound of feet pulling out of the mud and water. It wasn't like an animal, like a deer or something. It was heavier than that, and it was purposeful, like something was moving quickly, deliberately along the shoreline. And it was coming closer, coming towards the boat. Terror, real, bone-deep terror, just gripped me. It was like ice water in my veins. My breath hitched in my chest, and my heart pounded even harder, if that was possible. I wanted to move. I wanted to look. I wanted to get up, to grab something, anything, to defend myself, to see what the hell was making that sound. But I couldn't. I was frozen, completely, utterly paralyzed. I couldn't move a muscle. I tried to lift my head, to turn my eyes, even to twitch a finger, but nothing. My body was locked down, unresponsive. I was trapped inside myself, completely conscious, completely terrified, and completely unable to do anything. It was the most helpless feeling I have ever experienced in my life. Being awake, aware, knowing something was out there, moving closer, and being totally unable to react. Unable to protect myself, or Sarah, or even to look and see what was happening. The sound of whatever it was running through the water got closer and closer. I could hear it now, very clearly, the splashing, the sloshing, the rhythmic thud, thud, thud of something heavy moving fast through the shallow water. It sounded like it was right there, right at the edge of the cove, just on the shore, maybe 20, 30 feet from the boat. So close. Too close. I was straining with every ounce of my will to move, to just even slightly turn my head, to get a glimpse, anything. But it was no use. My body was like lead. It was like being trapped in a nightmare where you know you need to run, but you can't move your legs. Except this wasn't a dream. This was real. Or at least it felt terrifyingly real. The running sound stopped, just like the owls, abruptly, completely. 1 second, the splashing and running, and the next, nothing, just the same oppressive silence. But this time it felt different, colder, more present. It felt like whatever had been running in the water was now just there, standing there on the shore, right outside the cove, in the darkness, and watching us. On the boat, in the camper, sleeping, or pretending to sleep. I lay there, frozen solid, my heart pounding in my ears, straining to hear anything, any sound at all, over the frantic drumming of my own pulse. But there was nothing, just the silence, and this overwhelming feeling of being watched, of something out there, in the dark, close by, just being there. I don't know how long I lay there like that. Minutes? Hours? Time felt distorted, stretched and twisted by the terror and the paralysis. It felt like an eternity. Just lying there, completely helpless, completely terrified, feeling like something was just outside, watching, waiting. Slowly, gradually, the feeling of paralysis started to recede. It was like the grip on my body was slowly loosening, little by little. First I could twitch a finger, then another, then I could move my toes. Finally, agonizingly slowly, I could move my head, just a fraction. But it was movement. The paralysis was breaking. I blinked my eyes, which felt dry and scratchy. I took a shallow breath and then another, deeper one. I was still tense, still terrified, but I could move again. The paralysis was gone. I very, very slowly and quietly turned my head to look at Sarah. She was still asleep, or at least she seemed to be. Her breathing was slow and even. She hadn't woken up. She hadn't heard anything. She hadn't been paralyzed. It had just been me. I turned my head back towards the side of the boat facing the shore. Still dark, still silent. I could hear the gentle lapping of the water again now, faintly. The silence wasn't quite as absolute anymore. The normal night sounds were slowly starting to creep back in, the soft chirping of insects, the rustle of leaves in the trees. Cautiously, I sat up. My muscles were stiff and sore, like I'd been fighting against something for hours. I felt drained, exhausted, but also wired, completely on edge. I reached over and turned on the small lamp on the bedside table. The soft light felt strangely comforting, like a tiny beacon of normalcy in the darkness. I looked out the window again. Still dark, but different somehow. Less menacing. The oppressive feeling had lifted, just a little. I could breathe a little easier now. I listened intently. Nothing. Just the normal night sounds, the crickets and the frogs and the gentle breeze in the trees. The running sound was gone. Whatever it was gone. Or at least it wasn't making any noise anymore. I sat there for a long time, just listening, watching, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. The night slowly started to give way to dawn. The sky started to lighten, slowly at first, then faster, and the trees began to emerge from the darkness, taking shape, becoming solid again. The world slowly started to come back to life. And as the sun rose and the light filled the cove, the fear started to fade, replaced by a cold, lingering unease. By the time morning fully arrived and the birds started to sing and the lake shimmered in the sunlight, it almost felt like it had all been a dream. A really, really bad dream. But it wasn't a dream. I know it wasn't. The terror, the paralysis, the sounds in the water, it was too real, too vivid. and the memory of that silence, that heavy, watchful silence that still stays with me. We left Salt Fork Lake that morning. We didn't talk much about it on the way home. Sarah asked me if I'd slept okay, and I just mumbled something about not sleeping great. But I didn't tell her about the paralysis, or the running sound, or the feeling of being watched. I didn't want to scare her, and honestly, I wasn't even sure what to say. How do you explain something like that? Something that feels so real, so terrifying, but also so impossible. Even now, years later, I don't know what happened that night. Was it sleep paralysis? Maybe. But the sounds, the running in the water, that felt so real. And the owls, the way they stopped hooting as soon as I opened the camper, and then the silence afterwards. It all just felt connected somehow, like it was all part of something I still can't understand. I've tried to find explanations, to rationalize it, to make it make sense. Maybe it was just my imagination, fueled by the spooky owl sounds and the darkness. Maybe it was just a dream, a waking nightmare. But even if it was the most real, most terrifying nightmare I've ever had. And I can't shake the feeling that it was more than just a dream, that something was really out there in the dark waters of Salt Fork Lake that night. And that for a little while it was watching us, and I was completely helpless to do anything about it. And that's the part that still chills me to the bone, the helplessness, the feeling of being utterly vulnerable, trapped, while something unseen moves just outside in the dark. I still can't explain it, and I doubt I ever will. Story 13. It still messes with me, even months later. I keep replaying it in my head, trying to make sense of it, but it just doesn't. We go camping at Salt Fork Lake all the time. It's practically our backyard, feels that familiar. Tranquility Cove, we call it. It's this little inlet we always anchor the pontoon boat in. Real calm water, usually good fishing, especially for the grandkids. This time it was just Michael, me, and Lily. Lily's our youngest granddaughter, still just a peanut, 4 years old, all blonde curls and boundless energy. She's a fishing machine, honestly, for a kid her age. She'll cast that little Spider-Man rod all day long if you let her. So, we get there Friday afternoon, set up camp, you know the drill. Michael and I got the camper sorted. Lily was already itching to get on the boat. Saturday was perfect weather, sunny, not too hot. Spent most of the day out on the water. Lily and Michael were in their element, fishing off the front of the pontoon. I was just relaxing, reading a book, soaking up the sun. It was normal, just a good family day. Around evening, the sun started going down, that golden hour light. We were thinking about heading back to camp to get dinner started. Lily, of course, she wasn't ready to stop fishing. "One more cast, Grandpa. Just one more," she kept saying, that little determined voice. Michael, being the softy he is with her, he always gives in, so he's helping her with her line. He's got this old tackle box. Stuff's probably older than me in there, honestly. He's rummaging through it, trying to find a lure, I think, and he gets all tangled up. Line everywhere, hooks sticking to everything. Michael, bless his heart, he's usually so patient, but tackle gets to him sometimes. I was inside the camper, getting things organized for dinner. Needed to grab the cooler and some stuff. I opened the camper door and stepped out onto the deck of the pontoon boat. That's when I saw it. Now, you have to understand, it wasn't some dramatic build-up, like in movies. No spooky music, no sudden jump scare. It was just there, standing by the edge of the woods, on the bank, maybe 30, 40 feet away from the boat, just watching us. At first, I honestly thought it was a person. It was dusk, the light was getting that hazy, bluish tint, and it was big, really big, tall. I thought maybe it was some hiker, maybe lost, maybe needed help. But then I looked closer, and it wasn't a person. It was, I don't even know how to describe it right. The shape was human-ish, tall, broad shoulders. but it was way too broad, like unnaturally wide, and it was just massive, taller than any man I've ever seen. Probably close to 7 feet, maybe more, and thick, just solid. And the face, oh God, the face. From the chest down, it was covered in this dark brown hair, shiny, almost greasy-looking in the fading light, like thick dog hair, but longer, denser. But the face was bare, no hair at all. And that's what was so wrong, so disturbing. It was skin, pale, kind of a greyish tan, like old leather, and it was too flat, too wide. The features were pushed together. It had eyes, dark eyes. They were just staring, fixed on us, on the boat, on us fishing. And they weren't animal eyes. They weren't human eyes either, not exactly. They were intelligent, knowing, watching. It was like it was studying us, and it was swaying, just slightly, side to side. Not like it was unsteady, but almost rhythmic, like it was keeping time to something I couldn't hear. Slow, deliberate sway. I froze, absolutely frozen. My heart just slammed into my chest. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't even scream. My mind just went blank. It was like my brain short-circuited. All I could do was stare at this thing, watching us from the woods. Lily was still happily chattering away, completely oblivious. Michael was still wrestling with the fishing line, cursing under his breath, totally focused on the tangled mess. And this creature was just standing there, silently watching us. It felt like forever. Time just stopped. Everything else faded away. Just me and that thing staring at each other across the water. The silence was thick, heavy, except for Lily's little voice, which sounded impossibly cheerful and normal in that moment of utter wrongness. Then, slowly, I managed to get some air back in my lungs. I knew I had to say something. To Michael. I couldn't just stand there and scream, not with Lily right there. I had to be careful. I took a step back, very slowly, still keeping my eyes on it. It didn't move, just kept swaying, watching. I shuffled back to where Michael was still cursing at the fishing line. I leaned over to him, putting my mouth right by his ear, and whispered, just as quietly as I could. "Michael," I said, my voice shaking, barely a whisper itself. "Michael, don't turn around. Just listen to me." He stopped messing with the line, looked at me, a little annoyed, I could tell. "What, Sarah? I'm almost—" "Just listen," I repeated, even quieter. "Don't look, but there's something on the bank, in the woods." He frowned. "What? Like an animal? Deer? Raccoon getting into the bait?" "No," I whispered, my voice trembling even more now. "No, it's not an animal. I don't know what it is, Michael. But it's big, really big, and it's watching us." He stopped frowning. I saw the confusion in his eyes, then a flicker of something else, maybe concern. He could see I was genuinely scared. I'm not someone who scares easily, you know. Michael knows that. "What do you mean, Sarah?" he whispered back, still not turning around, still trying to untangle the fishing line, but I could tell he was listening now, really listening. His movements had slowed. "It's tall," I said. "Dark hair, on its chest, but its face, it's bare, like skin, pale skin, but not human. It's watching us, from the edge of the woods, right there." I pointed with my eyes, trying not to make any sudden movements. Towards the woods behind us, towards where it was. He still didn't turn. He just stayed crouched there, fiddling with the fishing line, but I knew he was listening, every nerve on alert. He knows me. He knows when I'm serious, and he could hear the fear in my voice. I'm sure he could feel it radiating off me. "Don't turn around, Michael," I repeated, my voice barely above a breath. "Please, just stay calm. Don't scare it. Just act normal, like nothing's wrong." He took a deep breath. I could see his shoulders tense up. But he didn't turn. He kept his back to the woods. And he started talking very calmly, like he was just chatting normally. "Lily-bug," he said, his voice a little too loud, a little too cheerful, but I could tell he was trying. "You know, maybe it is getting a little late. Sun's going down. Starting to get chilly, huh?" He was talking to Lily, still facing away from the woods. Lily just nodded, still focused on her fishing rod, didn't even seem to notice anything was off. Thank God. "Maybe we should pack it up for tonight," Michael continued, his voice still too forcedly cheerful. "Get some supper going. How about hot dogs and beans tonight? Sound good?" Lily perked up at that. "Hot dogs," she chirped. "Yes." "Okay, hot dogs it is," Michael said, still talking way too loud. "Let's just reel in this line here. Okay, Lily, why don't you start reeling in your line too, okay, sweetheart?" Lily started reeling in her line, happy as a clam, and Michael, slowly, carefully, started to gather up the fishing rods, still keeping his back to the woods, still talking in that strained, cheerful voice. I just stood there, frozen again, watching it. It was still there, still swaying, still watching. It hadn't moved an inch. It was like a statue, but alive, intently, unnervingly alive. And those eyes, those dark, watching eyes. Michael, very slowly, started backing up towards me, towards the camper door. He was still talking, still trying to act normal, but he was moving like a snail, each step deliberate, controlled. Lily was still oblivious, reeling in her line, totally unaware of the sheer, gut-wrenching terror that was gripping us. We were moving so slowly I thought it would never end. Every second felt like an hour, and all the time I was watching it, making sure it didn't move, didn't do anything. I didn't know what it would do. I didn't want to find out. Finally, we were at the camper door. Michael reached behind him, fumbled for the door handle, opened it. "Okay, Lily-bug, in we go," he said, still forcing that fake cheerfulness. He ushered Lily inside the camper. She went in without a fuss, still chattering about hot dogs. Then Michael stepped in after her, and I was left outside, still staring at it, still frozen with fear. Michael reached out, grabbed my hand, pulled me inside the camper, and slammed the door shut, and locked it. He actually locked the camper door. We never lock the camper door when we're camping. But he locked it. We stood there inside the camper, in the sudden dimness, panting, heart pounding. Lily was already halfway through the camper, heading for her coloring books, still completely unaware of what had just happened. Michael turned to me. His face was pale, almost grey. His eyes were wide, scared. Did you really see something, Sarah?" he whispered, his voice hoarse now, the fake cheerfulness gone completely. I just nodded. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, my throat too tight, too choked with fear. Tears were welling up in my eyes finally. The shock was starting to wear off, and the fear was hitting me full force now. What was it?" he whispered. "What did you see?" I took a shaky breath, trying to calm down, trying to find the words. I don't know, Michael," I said, my voice still trembling. "I honestly don't know. It was big, tall, covered in dark hair, except for its face. Its face was like skin, but not human. It was watching us, from the woods, just watching." He just stared at me. He knew I wasn't making it up. He could see it in my face. He knew I was genuinely terrified. We just stood there for a moment in silence, the fear hanging heavy in the air. Then Michael went to the window, the one that faces the woods, the one that faces where it was. He went to the edge of the window very cautiously and peeked out, just a quick glance. Then he stepped back quickly, like he'd been burned. It's gone," he whispered. "I don't see anything." He looked at me again, his eyes still wide with fear and disbelief. "Sarah, what was that?" I shook my head. "I don't know," I whispered again. I don't know. We didn't go outside again that night, not after dark. We made hot dogs and beans inside the camper. Lily ate hers, happy as could be. Michael and I just picked at ours, neither of us really hungry. We were both too shaken. We stayed up late that night, just talking in hushed voices, trying to make sense of what I'd seen, trying to find some logical explanation. Bear? No, not the face. Deer? Definitely not. Some person in a suit? Maybe? But it felt wrong. So wrong. It didn't feel like a person in a suit. It felt real and ancient and terrifying. We didn't sleep much that night. Every little sound outside made me jump. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig. I kept imagining those dark eyes, watching us from the woods. The next morning we packed up early, cut the trip short. Lily was disappointed, but she didn't argue. She could probably sense that something was wrong, even if she didn't know what. Michael and I just wanted to get home, get away from that lake, from those woods. We haven't been back to Tranquility Cove since. Haven't been back to Salt Fork Lake at all. I don't know if we ever will go back. The thought of it just gives me chills. I can still see it clear as day, standing there in the woods watching us. That face, those eyes. I know what I saw. I know it wasn't my imagination. Michael knows it too. He saw the fear in my eyes. He knows I wouldn't make something like that up. But what was it? What did I see? And what did it want? I still don't have any answers. And honestly, I don't think I ever will. But I can't shake the feeling that we were being watched. That there's something out there in those woods that we don't understand. Something else. And that scares me more than anything. The unknown. The feeling that we're not alone. And that whatever is watching isn't friendly. Not friendly at all. It just watched. And that's what's so unsettling. Just watched. Story 14. The sky was incredible that night. No moon, just this insane blanket of stars. Emily was pointing out constellations, something she's always been way better at than me. I was mostly just soaking it all in. The quiet, the cool air, that smell of the lake and damp leaves from the woods nearby. It's peaceful, real peaceful out there. We were both just lying back on the deck of the pontoon, blankets pulled up, looking straight up, when this thing happened. At first I thought it was just a plane, even though it was way too high and too bright for a plane. But it wasn't moving like a plane either. It was just there, almost directly overhead, this crazy bright white light. Like I mean bright, way brighter than any star. It wasn't twinkling or anything. It was just a solid, intense white. It made the stars around it look almost dim in comparison. We both just stopped talking and stared. Emily nudged me and whispered, "What is that?" I shook my head. I have no idea. I felt my heart start to pick up a little, just out of sheer, I don't know, surprise. It was just so unexpected, so out of place up there. We kept watching it. It started to move, really slowly, like it was drifting from north to south across the sky. It wasn't fast like a shooting star. It was a slow, deliberate movement, like it was observing something. That sounds crazy, I know, but that's the feeling I got. It was silent, absolutely silent. No engine noise, no buzzing, nothing. Just this impossibly bright white light moving across the black sky. We watched it, I'm telling you, for what felt like a long time. Minutes, definitely. Maybe 5, maybe more. It's hard to say when you're just staring at something like that. Time kind of loses meaning. I remember feeling this weird mix of awe and unease. It was beautiful in a way, just because it was so strange and striking. But at the same time, there was something deeply unsettling about it. It felt unnatural, like it wasn't supposed to be there, like we were seeing something we weren't meant to see. Emily squeezed my hand tight. She wasn't saying anything, but I could tell she was freaked out too. We just kept watching it move, this silent, bright, unidentifiable thing in the sky. It was like it was putting on a show just for us. And then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. It didn't speed off, didn't fade out. It just switched off, like someone flicked a light switch. 1 second it was there, this blindingly bright light, and the next second, nothing. Just the normal stars again, like it had never happened. We both blinked, looked at each other. "Did you see that?" Emily finally asked, her voice a little shaky. "Yeah," I said, still staring up at the empty spot where it had been. "I definitely saw that." We stayed quiet for a while after that, just trying to process it. What the hell was that? We tried to come up with explanations. Maybe it was some kind of military thing, a really bright drone. But it was so high, so silent, and then to just disappear like that, it didn't make any sense. And I've seen satellites before. They don't look anything like that. This was way bigger, way brighter, and moved differently. We talked about it for a bit, going over what we'd seen, trying to make sense of it, but we just couldn't. It was just unexplained. Eventually we tried to brush it off, told ourselves we were probably just tired and seeing things, and tried to go back to looking at the stars, but it wasn't the same. That feeling of unease, of something being not quite right, had settled in. We eventually decided to turn in. We got inside the cabin part of the pontoon, zipped up the canvas, and got into our sleeping bags. But even inside, in the dark, with the canvas walls around us, I couldn't shake that feeling. It was like that light had opened something up, some kind of awareness, or maybe just a hole in my sense of normalcy. We were lying there in silence for a while, listening to the gentle lapping of the water against the boat, the chirping of crickets in the woods on the shore, just normal nighttime sounds. Then we heard it. It started faintly, a kind of rustling sound from the direction of the ridge. Horizon Ridge. It was this long, sloping hillside that went down to the lake, completely covered in trees and brush. We'd anchored pretty close to the shore, maybe 50, 60 yards out. The ridge was maybe 100 yards from the shoreline at its base. At first, I thought it was just an animal, maybe a deer moving through the woods. But it wasn't quite right. It wasn't the snapping of twigs and branches you usually hear with a deer. This was different. It was more rhythmic, a kind of swishing sound, like something dragging through dry leaves. Swish, swish, swish. It was slow, deliberate, and rhythmic, like a regular beat, but organic, like it was being made by something moving. And it was coming down the hill, getting closer. The sound wasn't loud, not at first. It was subtle, but because it was so rhythmic and distinct, it cut through the normal background noise of the night. Emily and I both froze. We stopped breathing almost. The sounds got clearer, closer. Swish, swish, swish. Definitely leaves, dry leaves being pushed aside, dragged through. But what would be making that sound? And why was it so rhythmic? It wasn't like an animal crashing through the woods. It was too measured, too consistent. It was like someone was deliberately dragging something heavy through the leaves, keeping a steady pace. My heart started to pound in my chest. The feeling from the light in the sky came rushing back, amplified by this new, earthly sound. Fear, real fear, started to creep in. This didn't feel normal. This didn't feel like anything natural. The swishing was getting louder now, definitely closer to the lakeshore. It was coming down the ridge directly towards us. Swish, swish, swish. I could almost imagine it, whatever it was, moving through the trees, down the slope, unseen in the darkness. I nudged Emily again, pointed towards the ridge. She nodded, her eyes wide in the dim light from the small cabin window. We were both listening intently now, straining to hear, trying to make sense of it. I thought about the flashlight. We had a really powerful one, a big spotlight. I kept it under the seat console in the cabin. I figured, if whatever it was got close enough to the shoreline, I'd switch it on, see what it was. Maybe it was just a person, a hiker lost in the woods. That was unlikely, especially at this hour, but I tried to grasp at any rational explanation. But even as I thought that, I knew deep down it wasn't a person. It felt different. The swishing continued, unwavering, rhythmic, approaching. It felt like it was getting closer and closer to the water's edge. I held my breath, waiting, listening. Swish, swish, swish. Each swish seemed to echo in the silence, each one making the hair on my arms stand up a little more. I estimated the distance in my head. If it was coming straight down the ridge, it should be reaching the lakeshore any minute now. Just beyond the trees, maybe just at the edge of the woods, I decided, when I heard it get to the water's edge, I'd flip on the flashlight. That was the plan. I reached for the flashlight under the seat, my hand shaking slightly. Emily was beside me, completely still, her eyes fixed on the direction of the sounds. We both waited. The swishing continued, louder now, definitely very close to the shoreline. Okay, I thought, now. I took a deep breath, grabbed the flashlight, pointed it towards the dark woods on the ridge, and flicked the switch. The beam of light shot out, cutting through the darkness. It was incredibly bright, illuminating everything in its path. The entire hillside in front of us was instantly flooded with white light. I swept the beam slowly across the woods, from left to right, searching, expecting to see something, but there was nothing, just trees, branches, leaves, undergrowth. The flashlight beam reached deep into the woods, lighting up every detail, every shadow, and there was nothing there. No movement, no sign of anything, just empty woods. The rhythmic swishing had stopped, completely, as abruptly as the light in the sky had vanished. Just silence, except for the ringing in my ears and the pounding of my heart. I kept the flashlight beam steady on the woods, scanning, searching, hoping to see... What? I didn't even know, but there was nothing. Just empty woods, silent and still, like nothing had ever been there, like the sounds had been a figment of our imagination. But we both heard it, we both felt it, that creeping fear, that sense of something unseen, something inexplicable moving in the dark woods just beyond our sight. I slowly lowered the flashlight beam, letting it rest on the water, still scanning the shoreline, the edge of the trees. Nothing, just the dark water, reflecting the starlight, the silent woods, the still night. We stayed there for a long time after that, in complete silence, the flashlight beam slowly dimming in my hand as the batteries started to lose power. We kept staring at the woods, listening, waiting, but nothing happened. The swishing sounds never returned. The woods remained silent and empty. Eventually, we turned off the flashlight and just sat there in the darkness, listening to the night sounds again. The crickets chirping, the water lapping, the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. Everything sounded normal, but nothing felt normal. That feeling of being watched, of something uncanny having happened, lingered, heavy and unsettling. It was like we'd glimpsed something we weren't supposed to see, heard something we weren't supposed to hear, and then it had just vanished, leaving no trace, no explanation. We didn't sleep much that night. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made us jump. We kept looking towards the ridge, half expecting to see something, hear something again, but there was nothing. The next morning, when the sun came up, everything looked normal again. The lake sparkled, the woods were green and peaceful. The ridge was just a sloping hillside covered in trees. In the daylight, it was hard to believe what we'd experienced the night before. It almost felt like a bad dream, but it wasn't a dream. We both saw the light in the sky. We both heard the swishing sounds in the woods, and we both saw nothing when we shined the light. Nothing. We packed up our camp and headed back to the marina. We didn't talk much about it on the way back. What was there to say? We'd seen something, heard something that we couldn't explain, and it left us with this lingering feeling of, what? Fear? Confusion? Just a deep, unsettling sense of the unknown. To this day, I don't know what we saw in the sky that night. I don't know what made those swishing sounds in the woods, and I don't know why they both just vanished as quickly as they appeared, leaving us staring into empty space and silent woods. Sometimes, when I'm out in the woods, or when I look up at the night sky, I think about that night on Salt Fork Lake. I think about the bright white light and the rhythmic swishing sounds. And I still get that same feeling of unease, that feeling that there's something out there, unseen, unheard, just beyond our understanding. Something watching, something listening in the dark woods and in the empty sky above. And I still can't shake the feeling that we were never really alone out there that night, even when we thought we were. Story 15. It happened out near Julian, California. You know, out in the sticks. I was staying at this place, Rancho Sombrio they called it, which literally means shadowy ranch. Kind of creepy name right off the bat, huh? It was my cousin's place, way out in the county, real isolated. I was trying to get away from the city noise and just think, you know. College was getting to me, and I just needed to disappear for a bit. Bruno, he lived nearby, worked on some of the ranches around there. He's this local guy, knows the area like the back of his hand, real outdoorsy, you know. We got to talking one afternoon about the woods, the swampy areas around there. Locals always had stories, whispered things about weird creatures out in the dark, especially down by the marsh. I'm usually a pretty skeptical guy, science student and all that. Bruno, though, he's lived here his whole life. He grew up on these stories, and honestly, he seemed to believe some of them. Not in a crazy tinfoil hat way, but like he respected that the woods had secrets. Anyway, he got it into his head that we should go check out the swamp at night. He wanted to go frog hunting with a pellet rifle. I know, sounds dumb now even saying it, frog hunting in the dark, but at the time it sounded like an adventure, I guess. A way to see if there was anything to these weird stories or just prove it was all BS. Mostly BS, I thought. Bruno was totally up for it. He's always up for getting out in nature, plus he's fearless, I swear. Grew up in these hills, hunting, hiking, you name it. He's like, dude, it'll be cool. We'll see some wildlife, maybe get some frogs. It'll be something to do. So that night, we set out. It was late, probably around 10 or 11. Pitch black, no moon, just stars, but even they felt far away, swallowed by the darkness. We had flashlights, good ones, and Bruno had this old pellet rifle. He wasn't serious about using it on anything big, just for, I don't know, to feel prepared, I guess. Mostly for frogs, he kept saying. Walking out there, it was already different at night. During the day, it's pretty, you know, rolling hills, scrub brush, the sun's always shining in Southern California. But at night, man, everything changes. The shadows are deep and everything feels alive, but in a different way, like it's watching you. We headed towards the swamp area. There's this kind of trail that cuts through the woods, leads you towards this marshy bit. It's not really a swamp like in the movies, more like a big, muddy wetland surrounded by trees and thick brush. The air started to get heavier, damp and cooler as we got closer. The sounds changed too. No more crickets chirping like back at the ranch. It was quieter, but a heavy kind of quiet, like the air itself was muffling sound. We walked maybe 10-15 minutes into the woods, following this narrow path. Bruno was in front, flashlight cutting through the dark, me behind him, trying to keep from tripping on roots and rocks. The trees closed in around us, branches tangling overhead, and the ground got softer, muddier. We could hear the swamp now, a low, gurgling sound like the earth itself was breathing wetly. And the smell. It was a smell of damp earth, decaying leaves and something else. Something musky and kind of rank. But I couldn't quite place it. We got to this point where the path narrowed even more, and the brush was thick on both sides. It was really dark in there. Our flashlights just made these small tunnels of light in the blackness, and everything outside that light felt like it was pressing in. Our voices dropped without us even realizing it, just instinctively quiet, like we were intruding on something. That's when we heard it. A snap, like a branch breaking, not far off to our right, just into the woods. We both stopped dead, flashlights swinging towards the sound. Silence. Just the swamp noises, the rustle of leaves in the slight breeze. Bruno looked at me, a little question in his eyes. "Probably just a deer," he whispered. "Or a raccoon." "Yeah, probably. Deer and raccoons are common out there." It made sense. We started walking again, slower this time, but something felt different, uneasy, like that snap wasn't just an animal. Then it happened again. Another snap, closer this time, and louder. And then the sound of leaves rustling, but not like from the wind. It was something moving through the undergrowth, and it wasn't moving like a normal animal. Deer move gracefully, even in the dark. Raccoons are quick and light-footed. This was heavy, crashing, like something big and clumsy was just barging through the trees, not trying to be quiet at all. My heart started to thump harder, not just from the scare, but from something else, a feeling that prickled the back of my neck. This wasn't right. This didn't sound like any animal I knew. Bruno stopped again, his flashlight fixed into the darkness where the sound came from. He was dead still, like he was listening with his whole body. I could see his silhouette in the flashlight beam, tense, rigid. "What is it?" I whispered, my voice tight. He didn't answer. He just slowly raised the pellet rifle, pointing it in the direction of the noise. It was stupid, I know, a pellet rifle. Against a deer, maybe. Against whatever this was. Seemed ridiculously inadequate all of a sudden. The crashing sounds were getting closer, faster now. It wasn't just breaking branches anymore. It was like something was ripping through the brush, not even bothering to avoid it, just plowing straight ahead. The air felt charged, thick with something. Fear, I guess. My own fear, but also something else, something wild. Then we heard the breathing, heavy, ragged breathing, like something was winded or angry, and a sound underneath the breathing, a low hiss, like air being forced through teeth, but deeper, guttural. It was a sound that sent shivers down my spine, not just a normal, scary sound, but something primal, something that made your gut clench. My breath hitched in my throat. Fear clamped down, cold and paralyzing. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it, trying to find a logical explanation, but coming up empty. Deer don't breathe like that. Mountain lions don't sound like that. Bears, maybe a bear, but it didn't feel like a bear. This felt wrong, completely, fundamentally wrong. The crashing was right on us now, just a few yards away, in the thick brush to the right of the path. Bruno was pointing the flashlight, his hand shaking slightly, the rifle held tight. I stood behind him, flashlight shaking too, uselessly pointed into the dark, my eyes straining, trying to see through the thick tangle of leaves and branches. And then I saw them. 2 points of light, deep in the blackness, reflecting back from Bruno's flashlight beam. Red, bright, burning red, like embers glowing in the dark. Eyes, but not animal eyes, not deer eyes, which reflect white or green, not cat eyes, which are usually yellowish. These were red, pure, malevolent red. They were high off the ground, too high for a deer, higher than a dog, higher than anything normal that would be in these woods. And they were wide, set far apart, looking right at us. Then the branches parted, violently ripped aside, and whatever was making those red eyes stepped out onto the path. I wish I could describe it properly, put it into words that make sense. But even now, it feels like trying to describe a nightmare you had. The edges always blur, the details slip away, leaving just the raw, overwhelming feeling of terror. It was big, enormous, towering. Taller than any man, maybe 8, 9 feet tall, I don't even know. It was covered in hair. Thick, matted, dark hair all over its body. Not fur like an animal, but hair, like a monstrous walking carpet. The hair was dark, almost black in the dim light, but in the red glow from its eyes, it seemed to have reddish-brown highlights like rust. Its face, I didn't really see a face. Not in the way you see a human face or an animal face. It was just dark, shadowed, mouth maybe, a snout. I couldn't make out details, just darkness and those red eyes burning into us. And the smell. That smell I'd noticed before, in the swamp air, it hit us full force now. Musky, rank like rotting meat mixed with wet dog, but 100 times stronger. It filled my nostrils, burned my throat, made my stomach heave. Then it screamed, not a growl, not a roar, not a bark, a scream, a high-pitched, deafening, inhuman scream. It ripped through the night, tore apart the silence of the swamp, shattered everything rational in my mind. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated rage and terror, a sound that vibrated in my bones, that went straight to some primal part of my brain and flipped a switch labeled panic. My rationality just vanished. Poof, gone. Skepticism, science, logic, all meaningless, all erased by that scream and that thing standing in front of us. My brain just shut down, all higher functions overridden by raw, screaming fear. I froze, completely, utterly paralyzed. Muscles locked, breath stopped in my lungs, mind blank except for that sound, those eyes, that massive hairy shape. Terror had me pinned to the spot, a bug under a microscope. Bruno. He froze too. He didn't move, didn't shoot the pellet rifle, didn't even flinch. He just stood there, rigid, flashlight beam locked on those red eyes. I could see the white of his knuckles where he gripped the rifle. He was just as terrified as me, I knew it, even though Bruno is usually so tough. The creature just stood there too, for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only seconds. It was maybe 20 feet away from us, blocking the path, massive and menacing, those red eyes boring into us, that horrible smell filling the air, that scream still echoing in my ears. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. It didn't run. It didn't turn around. It just vanished. 1 second it was there, huge and solid, filling the path, and the next, nothing. Just empty space, dark trees, rustling leaves. The red eyes blinked out like someone had flipped a switch. The scream died away in the air. The smell lingered, faint, but still there. We stood there, frozen, for what felt like another eternity, just staring at the empty path where it had been, flashlights shaking, breath ragged. Neither of us moved, neither of us spoke. We were statues carved from fear. Finally, Bruno lowered the rifle slowly. His hand was still shaking. He turned his head slowly, looked at me. His face was pale, white as a sheet in the flashlight beam. His eyes were wide, pupils dilated, black pools of shock. He whispered, voice hoarse, barely audible, Did you see that?" I could only nod, dumbly, my throat too tight to speak. Did I see it? Had that really just happened? Or had we both just hallucinated the same impossible thing? He took a shaky breath, then another. We need to go. Now." And we ran. We turned and ran back the way we came, scrambling through the woods, tripping over roots and rocks, crashing through bushes, flashlights bouncing wildly, throwing jagged shadows that seemed to chase us. We didn't look back. We didn't stop. We just ran. Ran like our lives depended on it, because in that moment it felt like they did. We ran all the way back to the ranch house, didn't stop until we were inside, slamming the door shut, locking it, bolting it, like we were trying to keep something out, something that was still back there in the dark woods, maybe chasing us still. We stood in the living room, panting, gasping for breath, chests heaving, hearts hammering in our chests. Sweat poured down our faces. We just stood there, staring at each other, saying nothing, just the silence of the house pressing in around us, a welcome silence after the screams and crashing of the swamp. Finally, I managed to croak out, "What? What the hell was that?" Bruno just shook his head, his eyes still wide and haunted. I don't know, man. I have no idea." He ran a hand through his hair, his hand trembling. "I've never seen anything like that in my life. Never heard anything like that." We sat up for the rest of the night talking in low voices, trying to make sense of it, trying to find some rational explanation. But there wasn't one. There just wasn't. We tried to convince ourselves it was a bear, a mountain lion, something else we couldn't identify in the dark. But it didn't fit. Nothing fit. Not the size, not the shape, not the smell, definitely not the scream, and most of all, not those red eyes. Those burning, unnatural red eyes. We never went back to the swamp after that. Not at night, not ever. During the day, sometimes Bruno would go hiking in those woods. He's still got that connection to nature. He can't just give it up. But he stays away from the swamp now, and he never goes out there after dark. Neither do I. I went back to the city a few weeks later, back to college, back to my life. But a part of me stayed behind, in those woods, back in the darkness with those red eyes. And honestly, I still hear that scream sometimes in my dreams when it's really quiet, and I still see those eyes burning red in the black. I don't know what it was we saw out there that night. I don't have any explanation for it. And I really, really don't want to know. Some things are better left in the dark, I think. Some questions are better left unasked. And some nights are just pure, unadulterated terror that you carry with you for the rest of your life. A chilling reminder that the world is a lot stranger and a lot scarier than you ever thought possible. And that's the honest truth, I swear. That's all I know.